It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the facts.
Hello, dissidents. Welcome, one and all, to a Sunday evening edition of the Do Dissidents podcast. Keaton Weiss here. Russell is, I guess, on his way. Guess he lost track of time. I guess he was hosting an event and it ran late. And, he wishes he could have been here on time. He's wondering maybe if we're recording in an hour, if we're still on the air, he can join. Oh, there he is, Russell Dobular, of course.
You know, the time lag got me.
What time lag?
Because when you're like playing it through the phone, it's not.
Yeah, there's like a 20-second delay. That's right. That's right. There's a 20-second delay. So you're actually looking 20 seconds into the past, folks.
Basically,
from when we talk to when you hear us. Does that ruin it for you? Does that ruin the mystique of the show, that there's a 20-second lag? Hope not. Well, hey, we thank everybody for being here very much tonight. Great crowd to start things off. 837 strong in the YouTube chat. 686 strong over on Rumble. So that Jill Biden clip, that was a year ago on Friday. 1 year. How about that?
Is that insane?
The 1 year end. Yeah, isn't that insane? Feels like just yesterday. 1 year since one of the most historic nights in American politics. A year ago. That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Crazy. I remember it like yesterday.
That's
I remember
insane.
That entire stream. Yeah.
That's insane. Yep. And then we had a lot of chuds come in and start to take over our chat, and a lot of because our coverage on that was so savage.
Yeah.
That it drew a lot of people in. They thought we were going to go MAGA.
Right.
And then Daryl Cooper fucked up our shit, man.
Exactly.
The one little Daryl Cooper said we would have been on Rogan by now.
Ruined it all. That's right.
Shit. A mother fucking Nazi bastard.
You're right. See,
Fucked
the Nazis, they ruin everything, you know? They ruin everything.
They march right into your Alsace, man. They do it every time.
A Nazi is a bull in a china shop. It really is.
Yep.
You know? They had no sense of subtlety whatsoever. No tact, no grace. Nazis are not graceful people. That's for sure.
There we were, pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps, minding our own business.
Exactly.
And Daryl Cooper marched right into our student land.
That's right. That's right. So, folks, pleasure to be here with you all. Please smash that like button and smash that subscribe button. Smash that follow button over on Rumble. And buckle up. We got a lot to talk about this evening. We will be switching to Rumble for the final segment of the show, which was the Glastonbury Music Festival. So some fun stuff to cover there. And then we will be taking your calls right after that. Patrons, paid Substackers, paid Locals members. Tonight is Q&A night. So we're going to go to Rumble for the final segment of the show and then stay on through Q&A. That's the plan, but it all starts with the big, beautiful bill.
The big, beautiful bill. Nobody's ever seen a bill like this. They're all talking about it. So, hang on, what?
You put up my Biden video by accident. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not what I clicked on. Okay, that was a little technical glitch. All right, so here's a little coverage of where we're at with the big, beautiful bill, although there's already some breaking news right before we went on the air that they added back in more Medicaid cuts.
Wow. So it's even worse than what we're about to talk about.
It's even worse than what we're about to talk about.
The United States Senate advancing the piece of legislation designed to serve as the foundation of the Trump agenda, what he calls his big, beautiful bill.
H.R. 1, an act to provide for
the final vote, 51 to 49, with 2 Republicans, Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina and Rand Paul of Kentucky, joining all Democrats in opposition. The legislation moving forward after a dramatic night filled with Republican Party leaders pulling members aside to hash out their concerns. President Trump posting on Truth Social, "Tonight we saw a great victory in the Senate." The massive package includes the extension of $4.5 trillion in Trump tax cuts. It also provides hundreds of billions of dollars to fund the Trump mass deportation program. But in an effort to rein in government spending, Republicans are overhauling benefits programs like Medicaid and SNAP, also known as food stamps, including new work requirements and forcing reauthorization to receive benefits every 6 months instead of 1 year.
It's really a terrifying time.
Those barriers make Courtney Leader nervous. The mom from Springfield, Missouri has a child with special needs and relies on Medicaid. She warns the extensive authorization process alone could lead to deserving people falling through the cracks.
We're not talking about living this life of luxury with Medicaid. We are honestly talking about this life and death and how do we provide for our child in our home.
Her Senator, Josh Hawley, shares those concerns, but still
but he voted for it anyway.
Voted to move the bill forward.
The Medicaid stuff in here, I think, is bad, and I think we've delayed the worst of it.
There's still work to be done in the Senate to get the bill passed. But if it does, the identical package needs to be voted on in the House. And already House members like David Valadao of California are warning they will vote no. Republicans can only afford to lose 3 votes in the House and have the bill pass. And Democrats will do all they can to slow this bill's progress down, but ultimately they can't stop it. After the clerk is done reading the bill, there will then be up to 20 hours of debate and then a process known as vote-a-rama, which isn't as fun as it sounds, where any senator can offer up an unlimited number of amendments to the package. Republicans believe even after all of that, they will have the votes to pass this bill, and then it will ultimately go to the House. Hallie?
Okay, so what he's talking about there is the Democrats. I didn't even know about this. They can force you to read the bill. So they're to slow it down, they're forcing them to read all, I believe it's 946 pages. But although it looks like a very broad swath of Americans are going to be victims of the big, beautiful bill, it's already claimed its first victim, Tom Tillis.
Yep.
Tom Tillis, who Trump announced he was going to primary, resigned rather than to face the wrath of Don Trump.
Well, he didn't resign from office. He's just not running for re-election.
Yeah, he's not running. Blakely, now that Senator Josh Hawley, for the 500th time, has proven with his votes that this whole I'm a populist shtick is a fraud, can liberals stop giving him credit for rhetoric he never backs up? He just voted for the big, beautiful bill that will cut Medicaid for so many in his own state. Yeah, I mean, that's always, if you want to know who Josh Hawley is, just go watch that video of him running through the Capitol. That's right. Josh Hawley. He likes to make a big stand in front of the cameras, but he has no political courage. He never has. Lisa Murkowski was extremely worried about the BBB, but voted to advance the bill after its revised text exempts Alaska from SNAP cuts, which provides $25 billion to Alaskan rural hospitals and gives $50K in write-offs to whaling captains.
Alaska is like the Israel of the United States.
So
like
fuck the rest of us. Yeah. All right, let me finish. Apparently she got here, so fuck the rest of us. Yeah, and actually in that breaking news, I was able to just skim the article. Apparently that's part of what they reverse now. I guess enough people bitched that Alaska and Hawaii was getting an exemption, so they got rid of those two things in this new revision that added back in more Medicaid cuts. So let's take a closer look. What's in the latest version of Trump's big bill now before the Senate? The legislation contains roughly $3.8 trillion in tax cuts. Now, remember, we have covered this many times. I don't know how exactly it's shifted. I'm sure not for the better of working and middle-class people. 68% of the money from these tax cuts, as originally conceived, go to the upper 20% of income earners. So this is almost entirely tax cuts for the rich. If you're a working guy whose response to that is, yeah, but the rich pay more taxes, you, my friend, are the victim of what we call around here a peasant mind. You have a peasant mind. Yes, you know why they pay more taxes? Because they have riches beyond imagining. It's an amount of money that they could never spend in 10 lifetimes. They make more money in a month than you're probably going to make between now and the day you die. So, yeah, they should bear the burden of taxes. The existing tax rates and brackets would become permanent under the bill. It temporarily would add new tax breaks that Trump campaigned on. No taxes on tips, overtime pay, or some automotive loans, along with a bigger $6,000 deduction in the Senate draft for older adults who earn no more than $75,000 a year. It would boost the $2,000 child tax credit to $2,200 under the Senate proposal. Families at lower income levels would not see the full amount. A cap on state and local deductions called SALT would quadruple to $40,000 for 5 years. It's a provision important to New York and other high-tax states, though the House wanted it to last for 10 years. Okay, so understand the state and local tax deduction. I am in New York, which now has more Republicans in the House than it used to, so this is more important to them. My SALT taxes, my state and my city and state taxes add up to like a few hundred every year. Do you know how much money you have to make to owe $40,000 in SALT taxes? Do you know how rich you have to be on the hook for $40,000 in state and local taxes? This is how greedy these people are. They are willing to grab the entire country by the ankles, turn it upside down, and shake it for loose change just to get a little bit more. That state and local tax deduction is really, really keeping them up nights. If you have got hundreds of millions of dollars if you're paying that in state and local taxes. You're a multimillionaire. And they actually brought political pressure to bear on their representatives to get this tax cut. This is what this bill is all about. It doesn't do anything for the deficit that they claim to care so much about. It actually makes it worse, as Thomas Massie keeps going on about, and Rand Paul. Now, Trump, so far, he hasn't announced he's gonna primary Rand Paul. He might consider that just, an embarrassment for him waiting to happen, so he's going to leave it alone. There are scores of business-related tax cuts. The wealthiest households would see a $12,000 increase from the legislation. The wealthiest households, $12,000. Now, that's an amount of money. I am betting most people watching right now, that is an amount of money like it would really improve your life, right? To get $12,000 right now. They're doing all this to give $12,000 to people who wouldn't even notice $12,000. $12,000 is nothing. That's like a negligent, it's a rounding error for these people. It would cost the poorest people $1,600 a year, according to the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office analysis of the House's version. Now, this doesn't get into details, but I assume that's based in tax credits. They're not going to get benefits. They're not going to get. So this is costing the poorest people $1,600. It's giving $12,000 to rich people for whom $12,000 is a nice lunch. Middle income taxpayers would see a tax break of $500 to $1,500, the CBO said. The bill would provide some $350 billion for Trump's border and national security agenda. including $46 billion for the U.S.-Mexico border wall and $45 billion for 100,000 migrant detention facility beds as he aims to fulfill his promise of the largest mass deportation operation in U.S. history. Money would go for hiring 10,000 new immigration and customs enforcement officers with $10,000 signing bonuses and a surge of Border Patrol officers as well. The goal is to deport some 1 million people per year. Now, I want you to think about that if you're one of these people who thinks that this is really going to improve your life. Okay, let's not even get into the immigration question. What could $350 billion actually spent on the citizens of the country? Not even the non-citizens. I'm not even talking about that. On the citizens of the country. What if they spent $350 billion making sure everyone could go to public colleges and universities for free? What if they used $350 billion to subsidize healthcare so you don't have those high health insurance bills? What if they did that with $350 billion? Wouldn't that improve your life instantly and definitely and clearly in a way that $350 billion spent on this theoretical scheme where because they get rid of all these immigrants at a moment when they're rapidly shifting to AI and automation anyway, somehow you're going to be able to pressure employers to pay you more? Like, wouldn't it be more of a sure thing for them to just put $350 billion into American citizens having a better life? Anything, Keaton?
No, go ahead.
Go on. The package includes new 80-hour-a-month work requirements for many adults receiving Medicaid and food stamps, including older people up to age 65. Parents of children 14, we need more Walmart greeters out there. That's what I'm always saying. Parents of children 14 and older would have to meet the program's work requirements. There's also a proposed new $35 copayment that can be charged to patients using Medicaid services. Now, you know, this is a bill written by people who have no idea what it is to not have $35. They have no concept of that. They have no concept of your bank account being overdrawn because you couldn't pay the electric bill. They have no concept of that. $35, they can pay it.
Well, they either that or they're thinking that this will end up being another sort of backdoor Medicaid cut because people who don't have the money for the copay will just forego the visit, forego the care.
Yeah, it's a good.
There's no other reason to charge
a
person poor enough to be on Medicaid a $35 copay unless you're a sadistic piece of shit, which our government is filled with.
Well, so much of this is so clearly about beating the peasants into the dirt.
Yeah, of course.
Know your place. Know your place. Some 80 million people rely on Medicaid, which expanded under Obama's Affordable Care Act, and 40 million use the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Most already work, according to analysts. Most of them already work. All told, the CBO estimates that under the House-passed bill, at least 10.9 million more people would go without health coverage, and 3 million more would not qualify for food stamps. Both House and Senate bills propose a dramatic rollback of the Biden-era green energy tax breaks for electric vehicles. They call that the Elon repeal.
Right. Yeah,
they
exactly.
also would phase out or terminate the various production and investment tax credits companies use to stand up wind, solar, and other renewable energy projects. Altogether, keeping the existing tax breaks and adding the new ones is expected to cost $3.8 trillion over the decade, the CBO says in its analysis of the House bill. An analysis of the Senate draft is pending. The CBO estimates the House-passed package would add $2.4 trillion to the nation's deficits over the decade. They kept telling you, we got to close the deficits or we're going to go bankrupt. Nothing to do with deficits. It's about redistribution of wealth. In a moment where we have wealth inequality that dwarfs the Gilded Age, They want more. Just like Marx predicted, in the final stages of capitalism, the capitalists will come loot the treasury for nothing left to loot. Now, Thomas Massey here, some of his exceptions are not ours, but he does take exception. You were promised the big, beautiful bill would do these things, but it does not. Prohibit welfare for illegal aliens. Stop funding sex changes for kids. End registration of suppressors. Defund Planned Parenthood 10 years. Implement REINS Act. Reduce the deficit. Okay, so some of this apparently is the parliamentarian shut down some of this because they're trying to do this through reconciliation so that they don't have to get Democrat votes. At the same time, George Bush fired the parliamentarian. That was something we talked about quite a bit when Biden didn't. So it's hard to imagine if they didn't want these things struck down, they wouldn't fire the parliamentarian, especially this crew. Like, these guys don't want to fire the parliamentarian. George Bush was Emily Post compared to this administration. Yeah. But you know who's happy?
The parliamentarian is probably the Jeffrey Epstein liaison. That's how. That's why. They were smart. See, that's how the deep state checked Donald Trump. They put the Epstein contact as the parliamentarian, so you can't touch him.
There you go.
That parliamentarian owns my ass. I swear.
I swear they have Polaroids. I can't talk about them.
Yeah, right.
I can't talk about them. They're very vile. I was not in my right mind then. Me and Marla had just split up.
Yeah,
I was doing some very bad things. Very bad things. So activist turned grifter Riley Gaines, and not a very good one. This is what I said when I was on Jimmy's show. We had a lot of the fucking small dick chuds have a meltdown about this. I said she needed to stay in her lane. Yeah, not because her background is as a swimmer, but because she's a dummy. That's why. Right. Like, she clearly doesn't know anything about these things, but she kind of glommed onto a way to make a living. And yeah, man, I sympathize. We gave a lot of positive coverage when she was covering that one thing that she was an activist in about men and women's sports. And I understand, man, like she was studying to be a dentist. That's not going to happen now. But Jesus Christ, what a grotesque lack of judgment at best, and willing. And basically, Riley Gaines is like the OnlyFans model of conservative media. She will say and do anything that these people want her to say and do. Today, we called on Congress to pass the big, beautiful bill and defund Planned Parenthood. Officially in my third trimester, I've been fighting for this little girl long before I ever heard her heartbeat. Listen, as somebody who's followed her more closely than most people in our space would have, I'm not buying it. It's a grift. I don't believe she believes that.
I don't believe that. I'm not buying she's pregnant.
Oh yeah. Oh no. Well, clearly that's a Cabbage Patch doll. You can see the outline.
Yeah, right.
I'm not buying it,
Bullshit.
man. Like, she seemed like a center-right-ish kind of a typical college student from her part of the country. This, like, foaming at the mouth to fund Planned Parenthood, deport the immigrants, white genocide. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. That's why I say she's like an OnlyFans model. What do they want me to say? What do they want me to say for cash today?
Even the swimming, she came in fifth, right? So that means like 3 biological women placed ahead of her too. So she's not a great swimmer either. She was going to be on the Freedom Flotilla, but Greta said, no, you can't come because if we get hit, we're going to have to swim. You're not a very good swimmer. You don't swim fast enough, so you can't come.
That was why she didn't make the cut. She was going to do,
and that's why she's right wing, because she got snubbed by the Freedom Flotilla people because she doesn't swim well enough.
Well, she was going to do a heel turn. She was going to do that WWE thing where all of a sudden she comes out as a lib. But yeah, they were afraid.
We appreciate it, but you swim too slow. It's very dangerous out there.
We don't have enough of the what do you call them? Flotation device, the ring. We only have enough for us. Not enough for you. So, okay, now Chloe Cole, I'm a lot more sympathetic to because she was basically a child. She was 13, and she was really kind of manipulated into getting medical treatments that no child, in my opinion, can really consent to. And then this is very interesting because with Riley Gaines, with Chloe Cole, the right-wing people glommed onto them and used them for their own purposes. They used them for their own agenda, which in the end doesn't really have anything to do with these causes that they're very passionate about. They just want to give tax cuts to their rich friends. That is their first, second, third, fourth, and fifth priority. If they get to 6, they'll get around to you. So Chloe Cole says they killed the defunding of transgender treatments for children. It doesn't make any sense. It makes sense if you understand that the absolute red line for them is not cutting taxes for their donors.
Right.
For their class. That's the red line. Throwing you under the bus, that's not a red line. That's a cost of doing business. If they persuaded you otherwise, well, that should be a wake-up call for you. Non-hyphenated American here points out the new and improved BBB and this 4.5 trillion is on top of the 20 trillion in debt, which was baked into the cake. There is nothing remotely conservative about any of this. And this chart shows different versions of the bill, how the House version would have increased the deficit by 3 trillion, Senate bill as written 3.5, Senate bill post Byrd rule after the parliamentarian got a hold of it, 4.2 trillion, Senate bill post Byrd plus rumored changes, 4.5 trillion. Now you would probably have to revise this because that's why they're putting these Medicaid cuts back in, because they're trying to satisfy the deficit hawks in their party. Now, hell hath no fury like a techno-feudalist scorned. So Elon has been quite vocal about this. The latest Senate draft bill will destroy millions of jobs in America and cause immense strategic harm to our country, not to mention my business. Utterly insane and destructive, like having a customer base of suburban libs and giving $300 million to their personal Antichrist, like that kind of insane and destructive. It gives handouts to industries of the past while severely damaging industries of the future. Look at the stop clock telling the right time. So he was quote tweeting Jesse Jenkins here, who I believe is in the energy field as an engineer. The new Senate draft raises taxes on all wind and solar projects that haven't begun construction today, unless they are placed in service by the end of 2027 and navigate complex, likely unworkable requirements to prove they don't use a drop of Chinese materials. After that, this bill adds a new tax on wind and solar projects that can't prove the same. Oh, and it does so while killing the tax credits to support domestic manufacturing of wind components at the end of 2027 and adding the same unworkable requirements to the credits supporting U.S. solar and critical minerals. It'll murder our nascent clean energy manufacturing sectors. Oh, and it actually kills the EV tax credits sooner than the House bill, after September 30th this year, rather than the end of 2025. Or 12 months after passage, as in the Finance Committee draft. This will destroy the battery manufacturing boom taking hold across Republican districts, killing hundreds of thousands of good jobs. Oh, and the cherry on top. This adds a new production tax for metallurgical coal. You read that right. Through the end of 2029, met coal producers get a 2.5% PTC. This bill kills the industries of the future while subsidizing the industries of the 19th century. It's insanity.
Antichrist fail. Peter Thiel thought he was ushering in the future, warding off the Antichrist. No such luck. Coal baby.
This guy never watched The Omen. You know who he was dealing with. And this shows what will theoretically happen under this bill in terms of clean energy capacity. And you can see once this comes in, the capacity to build collapses. If that tweet is right, and I have no reason to think it isn't, they're killing the subsidies for developing domestic ability to create these technologies while at the same time forbidding people from getting them from China.
Screw you guys. I'm going home.
Yeah, you know what this makes me think of? It was the funniest review of a restaurant I've ever seen on Yelp. We have a Chinese restaurant here, Ali's, and the food is just awful. Like the lo mein is basically like it should just be labeled starch with salt.
Right.
You should just order starch. That's all it is. It's like a lump of starch that's very salty. That's all it is. I saw somebody wrote a review. They cook like they hate people.
Yeah.
That's what this bill is,
Yeah.
man. This is a bill that reads like you hate the country. You hate the country. You would. This is something a foreign enemy would come up with to destroy the country.
Right.
So this is Mark Wayne Mullen, representative of Oklahoma, talking about how much people actually love this bill in spite of what Elon wants to tell you.
Elon Musk goes, listen, I respect Elon. I think he's right for his opinion, but he just doesn't know. And so I have to disregard that. What we're doing is delivering for the American people, and they know that. So if you look at any polling in the red states, especially where President Trump won, which he won the red states overwhelmingly, President Trump is popular, and the bill is extremely popular. Other polls can be, as you know, decided by what demographic you want to poll. And I imagine if they were to go poll blue states, well, the bill probably wouldn't be popular there.
Senator,
Okay, well, let's see what the Fox News poll says about it. 38%. This is Fox, not MSNBC. Fox News poll, 38% favorite, 59% oppose the bill. Yeah, so Mark Wayne, whatever fucking redneck name that guy has, he's bullshitting you. He's bullshitting you. Billy Bob over there has got it wrong. Elizabeth Warren, 1 in 4 nursing homes say they will be forced to close if Republicans pass Trump's big, beautiful bill. No grandma should be kicked out of her nursing home so that Mark Zuckerberg can buy another Hawaiian island. A little more on that later. So according to this chart, more than half of nursing homes would be forced to cut staff, and more than 1/4 would have to close their doors. And this was before they added back in those cuts. So it's actually worse than it was when they made that chart. All right, so here's Warren breaking down the just absolute nonsensical cruelty of this $35 copay.
Many $35 copays would people on Medicaid have to pay to fund just this one retroactive tax break, just for one company, Meta?
Senator Warren, you're taxing my math skills. But I believe that it would be over 400 million copays.
400 million copays. You understand that if every human being in America paid a copay, that still wouldn't be enough to cover what Meta is going to get from this one tax giveaway.
Okay. All right. One company that is enjoying record stock prices, like most of the companies in the exchange. The stock market just hit record highs again this week in the midst of a possibly World War III breaking out in the Middle East, cutting off trade relations with Canada. Market just hit a record high. All these companies have record profits, and they're getting a tax cut. That one company, just Meta, one company, if you got rid of that tax cut, you wouldn't have to do the copay.
Yep.
This is how much they hate you. This is how much they hate the peasants. I keep saying this, they want you dead. It's not a joke. I'm not kidding. I'm not being hyperbolic. They literally are trying to kill off enough of the population that the ones that are left won't be a threat. That is what I believe. And finally, people need to read the BBB plan. It cuts Pell Grants and subsidizes loans to students. It raises full-time student from 12 to 15 hours. Many kids take 12 hours because they have to work. It allows no stopping of payments if you become unemployed. It forbids future POTUSs from forgiving student loans. It doesn't allow loans to be discharged after 20 years of payments. You'll be paying out of your Social Security check. Yeah, I mean, this is all just a full court assault on the poor, to a large extent the middle class. Everyone is not rich. It's just an attack on the peasants. Why are they so determined to pass this? Because they know this is their window to fulfill every fantasy of ripping up the social safety net that they've had since Reagan. And they're not going to let it pass. They're not going to let it pass. Their donors won't let it pass. They don't even care if they lose seats in the midterms because of it. They don't care. They know the wheel comes around again. Trans sports, they'll run on some shit and get back in power, right? This is their window. This is their opportunity to turn this into a true feudal society. That is what they want. That is what their donors want. And that's why I think whatever problems they have in the House, they're going to pass it. They're going to pass it. And yeah, they might have to change some things here and there, but the broad strokes will remain intact.
Yeah, we will see. We will see how it goes in the House. Obviously, there are a lot of dissenters in the House, but there were dissenters in the Senate. The fact that Josh Hawley came around and voted for that is just fucking embarrassing. And the fact that, Tom Tillis rebelled and then was threatened with a primary and then announced that he would not seek re-election in 2026, which is when he's up for it, is an indication, I think, that you're right, that they're really not terribly concerned with the electoral consequences of this, which are going to be quite nightmarish. And, the fact that you have a lot of the Chud accounts, obviously Nick Sorter broke the news there that Tom Tillis was not going to be seeking another term. You got a lot of chest pounding about how Trump set him straight and he cowered, he went away. Like, you're so stupid. You're so stupid if your concern is holding on to power and maintaining the Senate majority, which I don't think the donors are worried about that. I think the donors, you're right. I think they see it as, look, this is our window. We got to run through and we'll deal with whatever happens. But the fact that Tillis is not seeking another term is potentially quite significant. North Carolina is not a deep red state. It's a swing state that leans red in what figures to be a blue wave year. That could be a tough Senate seat to keep, and now you have forfeited the incumbency advantage in what is looking like it will probably be a pretty close Senate race. So you basically took a chance of giving that seat up to the Democrats. Also, you could pound your chest at him and get him to resign because he wouldn't vote for the bill, which you passed anyway. You passed without him. So why'd you do that? It's pretty self-destructive, which tells me, as you said, they're not really concerned with that. This is their chance. They're going to lose the House in 2026, which means, legislatively speaking, Trump's agenda is going to be stymied come 2027 anyway, because if you lose one chamber, you may as well lose both, except for when it comes to the court and things like that. But they already have the Supreme Court. So, yeah, I don't think they are too worried about that. I think the fact that they kind of just bullied Tom Tillis out of a seat is an indication that they're not too worried about that. This is their chance to really turn the page on the Reagan era into something worse. They are on their way to doing it. Remains to be seen who votes yes, who votes no in the House, what adjustments they have to make. But this was an important hurdle that they cleared. And once again, you just like the Democrats have their cowards who talk a big game about how they're going to stand on principle and fold in the end. The Republicans have them in spades, too. Lisa Murkowski.
We're going to have to start
Josh
calling
Hawley.
them Pramila Hawley.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's just like that. It's just like that. And now, you're one step closer to getting this through in some form. Will they get there by the deadline? The deadline is the 4th. We will see. It'll be interesting to see what the final product looks like. But yeah, bad news. Bad news for sure.
Not good.
Not good. Believe me, not good. Michael Castillo, thanks for the $100. Appreciate that. That's very kind of you. Good sir. Thank you for that. We will get your sound drop prepared. Says, I swear to God, there needs to be more men like you. Well, thank you, Michael Castillo. Appreciate that. Appreciate that very much. Steve Bertram says, not a fan of Riley Gaines, but what are you doing other than attempting to show your allegiance? It feels like you are doing more and more culture war. And we're doing less and less culture war.
You should go watch one of our shows from a couple years back.
Yeah.
Like pre-October 7th. Go watch one of our shows.
Yeah. Yeah. I just, I'm just saying she's a very slow, very, very slow and bad swimmer.
As for me, who the hell are you? Are you Jesus Christ, you loser?
Hey, thank you, Michael Castillo. That's from Michael. Do we have we need a cowbell from Michael.
Oh, yeah.
You get the cowbell?
Yeah, look, man, I mean, we're not doing segment. I did a segment about her on Jimmy where I overall agreed with her because it was in the one area where I agree with her. It's in the one area that I don't think she ever should have been moving beyond, but she couldn't make a living off that indefinitely. So she got into the whole, right-wing grievance politics. She's their Shiksa goddess. Right, and,
exactly.
She's making some nice money off of it. But, it's sad when you see somebody who I agreed with her cause. We did a very sympathetic video when they trapped her in the classroom at what was that? Was that Berkeley? Was that at Berkeley where she got trapped in the classroom? It was definitely a college in San Francisco. So, yeah, man, to see her just turn into such a grifting piece of shit. Man, I have a certain contempt for that.
Racecar789, thanks for the $20. Appreciate that. Hey, guys, I'm in my mid-40s, but I'm trying to sound hip and cool. If bass means good, does treble mean bad? No, it does not. No, it does not.
It does not.
And you will not be hip if you say that, so please refrain from that. Thank you, Racecar. They'll appreciate that. Glad we could be of service to you. Let's see.
Somebody says she's on the Ben Shapiro payroll. She's not, right? Is she on the Daily Wire? She's not on the Daily Wire,
I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think so. Killer Hittin says, Iranian sleeper cells, OMFG. Have I mentioned sleeper cells? Did you hear about the sleeper cells from Iran? And possibly even sleeper cells, crouching sleeper hidden cell. Thank you, Killer Hittin. Appreciate that. Master Yoda, why should the U.S. fund everybody else's wars while American families suffer? Join the American Communist Party. ACP.US/join because the future belongs to the working class. Thank you, Master Yoda. Professor Brown note. So Zionists invoke woke right, devolve discourse into two-sided shit-throwing, i.e. standard Trump, Netanyahu, etc. See Nazi terrorism, defense, civilized genocide, fake news. Thank you, Professor Brown note. Appreciate that. My favorite part of the Big Beautiful Bill, says EO Shush, is replacing SNAP with food aid stations where we can take shots at starving people. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. What starts abroad comes home. Thank you, EO Shush. Good one. All right. We'll move right on along. We got a nice crowd filing in here. 2,400 strong in the YouTube chat. It's good for one of these. And give a shout out to Jake in the booth. Round of applause for Jake in the booth helping us out tonight. All right. Well, we are going to move right on along here. All right, folks. So here's some more news on the Israel-Iran front. Israel will attack Iran again if it feels threatened, says Defense Minister Israel Katz. That's right. Their defense minister is named Israel Katz. That would be like if our defense secretary were named America Smith. Right? Yeah. Israel Katz. He promises to hit Iran 100 times more severely than Gaza or Lebanon. So if you thought this was over, this Israel-Iran war, if you thought the 12-day war was going to be the beginning and the end of it, the point of this segment is to caution you against that kind of complacency, because I am of the very strong opinion that this is nowhere near over. And apparently, so is Israel Katz. So he says here, we thwarted, Jesus, they talk so fast. Essentially, we thwarted Iran's nuclear program. Now, to ensure this doesn't happen again, the Prime Minister and I tasked with IDF preparing plan and enforcement plan. A clear plan that states Israel will not allow Iran to return and attempt to advance a nuclear program or a missile program that threatens Israel. And for this plan, we need to ensure air superiority, the continuation of aerial dominance, and differentiation. So in other words, Israel identifies the capabilities of restoration, blah, blah, blah. She's saying hold on, let me see. The capabilities on the other side should have struck first, absolutely. Like what we do in Lebanon, but 100 times more. U.S. approval required for such an operation? No. There is a difference between President Trump, who on the day of the ceasefire thought it was important, and we agreed to withdraw 50 planes, which were already over Iran, leaving 2 to strike specific locations there. And the process, I have no doubt that President Trump sees it the same way. All right, so what she says there, I think it's easier to just summarize what she says there to read. So she's saying basically you will implement the Lebanon and Gaza strategy on Iran should you feel threatened in the future that they are either working towards rebuilding their nuclear capabilities, or perhaps if there's evidence that their existing nuclear capabilities were not already destroyed. And he says only 100 times more. 100 times more than Lebanon or Gaza. So does that reassure you that we dodged a bullet, or did we just happen to get away temporarily? That's what it seems like to me. So Israel Katz tweets out, we completed Operation With a Lion in 12 days of brilliant activity that will inscribe a glorious chapter in the history of Israel and in the annals of wars worldwide. We opened the skies of Tehran to the Air Force's operations while eliminating air defense systems. We thwarted Iran's nuclear infrastructure, and thanks to our American allies for their assistance. We destroyed missile production systems and severely damaged launchers. We eliminated the security leadership and the leading scientists advancing the nuclear program. So he's basically saying is we murdered non-combatants. We murdered civilians. We murdered scientists and researchers. We demolished the plan to destroy Israel that Khomeini and his proxies built over decades. In the Tornado Plan, we severely struck regime symbols and oppressive bodies at the heart of Tehran while evacuating millions of the city's residents. The Israeli home front demonstrated heroism and enabled the IDF to continue operating with force in Iran.
Wow.
Together with the Prime Minister and the IDF, we created a united iron fist that struck the enemy with lethal force. I instructed the IDF to prepare an enforcement plan against Iran that includes maintaining Israel's air superiority, preventing nuclear advancement and missile production, and responses to Iran for supporting terrorist activities against the state of Israel. We will act consistently to thwart threats of this kind. I suggest to the toothless snake's head in Tehran to understand and beware. Operation With a Lion was just the preview of a new Israeli policy after October 7th, immunity is over. So they are just relentlessly threatening to restart this war. And this is why I'm telling you that you should not take comfort in the fact, or in the idea, the mistaken idea, in my opinion, that we're out of the woods. Exclusive from CNN, details emerge of secret diplomatic efforts to restart Iran talks. So this was on the 26th. The Trump administration has discussed possibly helping Iran access as much as $30 billion to build a civilian energy-producing nuclear program, easing sanctions, and freeing up billions of dollars in restricted Iranian funds, all part of an intensifying attempt to bring Tehran back to the negotiating table, four sources familiar with the matter said. Trump administration officials emphasized that several proposals have been floated. They are preliminary and evolving with one consistent, non-negotiable: zero Iranian enrichment of uranium, which Iran has consistently said it needs. But at least one preliminary draft proposal, described to CNN by two sources, includes several incentives for Iran. Among the terms being discussed, which have not been previously reported, is an estimated $20 to $30 billion investment in a new Iranian non-enrichment nuclear program that would be used for civilian energy purposes, Trump administration officials and sources familiar with the proposal told CNN. One official insisted that money would not come directly from the U.S., which prefers its Arab partners foot the bill. Investment in Iran's nuclear energy facilities has been discussed in previous rounds of nuclear talks in recent months. The U.S. is willing to lead these talks with Iran, the Trump administration official told CNN, and someone is going to need to pay for the nuclear program to be built, but we will not make that commitment. So, antiwar.com publishes this piece by our friend Dave DeCamp. Iran's foreign minister says no plans to restart talks with U.S. despite Trump's claim. So this is the other side of that piece we just read. The White House also acknowledged on Thursday that no date has been set for talks with Iran. In other comments, Arachi pointed out, sorry, am I missing a slide here? There we go. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Arachi said on Thursday that Iran currently has no plans to restart negotiations with the U.S., contradicting claims made by President Trump, who said a day earlier that Washington and Tehran would hold talks next week. Some speculations about the resumption of negotiations should not be taken seriously, Arachi said. I would like to state clearly that no agreement, arrangement, or conversation has been made to start new negotiations. No plan has been set yet to start negotiations. Now here is Donald Trump saying to the press that, yeah, you know what? If we have to, sure, we'll bomb Iran again.
Intelligence reports conclude that Iran can enrich uranium to a level that concerns you. Would you consider bombing the country again?
Without question, absolutely.
Have you had any...
Sure, without question, absolutely.
Would you consider bombing the country again?
Without question, absolutely.
Have you had any...
So now Reuters. Trump says he would consider bombing Iran again, drops sanctions relief plan. So the sanctions relief plan that CNN reported on, that Iran then kind of denied they were in talks, now Trump is saying, yeah, we're going to scrap that. U.S. President Donald Trump sharply criticized Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, on Friday, dropped plans to lift sanctions on Iran, and said he would consider bombing Iran again if Tehran is enriching uranium to worrisome levels. Trump reacted sternly to Khamenei's first remarks after a 12-day conflict with Israel that ended when the United States launched bombing raids last weekend against Iranian nuclear sites. Khamenei said Iran slapped America in the face by launching an attack against a major U.S. base in Qatar following the U.S. bombing raids. Khamenei also said Iran would never surrender. Trump said he had spared Khamenei's life. U.S. officials told Reuters on June 15th that Trump had vetoed an Israeli plan to kill the supreme leader. So I think this is worth reading. This was the Truth Social post that he posted regarding this on the 27th. So this would have been Friday. Why would the so-called supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, of the war-torn country of Iran, say so blatantly and foolishly that he won the war with Israel when he knows his statement is a lie? It is not so. As a man of great faith, he is not supposed to lie. His country was decimated, his 3 evil nuclear sites were obliterated, and I knew exactly where he was sheltered and would not let Israel or the U.S. Armed Forces, by far the greatest and most powerful in the world, terminate his life. I saved him from a very ugly and ignominious death, and he does not have to say thank you, President Trump. In fact, in the final act of the war, I demanded that Israel bring back a very large group of planes which were headed directly to Tehran, looking for a big day, perhaps the final knockout. Tremendous damage would have been ensued, and many Iranians would have been killed. It was, going to be the biggest attack of the war by far. During the last few days, I was working on the possible removal of sanctions and other things which would have given a much better chance to Iran at a full, fast, and complete recovery. The sanctions are biting, but no. Instead, I get hit with a statement of anger, hatred, and disgust. Oh, you mean because Israel bombed their country illegally? And immediately dropped all work on sanction relief and more. Iran has to get back into the world order flow, or things will only get worse for them. It's funny, they were in the world order flow when they had that nuclear deal that you scrapped in your first term in exchange for, Israel helping you win the 2016 race, right? They are always so angry, hostile, and unhappy. And look at what it has gotten them. A burned out, blown up country with no future, a decimated military, a horrible economy, and death all around them. They have no hope, and it will only get worse. I wish the leadership of Iran would realize that you often get more with honey than you do with vinegar. Peace. Okay, now, this is the reason I wanted to read all that is because I just have to say over and over again, and we've said it a lot, but it bears repeating, especially at a dangerous time like this. You really have to be a hopelessly stupid person to believe what your government and your media are telling you to try and gin up hostilities with Iran. Trump, in 5 days, had 3 positions on this. They're horrible. They've been killing us for 45 years. They chant death to America. They have to go. But I would like for them to be a beautiful country. I wish them all the best, all the luck in the world. We had to strike them and obliterate them. Turns out Iran did okay. They came out okay. Israel got hit pretty hard. Iran did, but so did Israel. But it turned out everything went good. God bless her. He said God bless Iran like 2 days ago. 2 days ago, he said God bless Iran.
Yeah.
Here it comes out. There's death all around them. They're decimated. They're burnt out, blown up. No country, no future. Like, he does not have his bullshit straight. He knows, and I think this is a lot of it, he knows that the Israelis have him by the balls, and they're going to try and drag him into war. That's why I think he's trying to get Bibi's trial thrown out. He is just making this up as he goes along. That's why there's conflicting reports about talks, no talks. Here he is on Fox News this morning. Trump insists they didn't move very heavy uranium, says enrichment isn't like air conditioning, and says an idea he has to loosen sanctions on Iran if they believe, which was literally the Iran deal Obama made. Threats to go after journalists for their sources, of course, very upset about the leaks that seem to go against his narrative that those nuclear sites were completely obliterated.
During negotiation, and I thought we could do it during negotiation, and we just about had it done. And then they said we want enrichment. Enrichment doesn't mean like air conditioning, and it doesn't mean to jack up your car. Enrichment is a bad word. We had a 60-day talk, and that delayed them a lot. And then we said, let's go at it.
Do you think that the Iran regime hid some of the enriched uranium before the strikes?
No. You mean, did they take it out of the deep one? No.
Because you were pretty clear you can't have a weapon. You're going to have to come to the talk. Something's going to happen.
I don't think they did. No, I think, first of all, it's very hard to do. It's very dangerous to do. It's very heavy, very, very heavy. No, they didn't. But I do believe that.
See, he's saying no, they didn't. See, this is what I mean. Like, he knows they're going to try and start shit up again.
Donnie, you're out of your element.
Exactly. He's insisting, no. They are totally obliterated, because he knows if the Israelis think they aren't, that they're going to strike again and that they're going to drag us back in.
They had people there because you had cars. They were saying cars. And those were masons. Those were people working with concrete. They were trying to seal up the entrance to where the bomb would most likely go in. And they did that. They were working on that, and the bomb went through it like it was butter, like it was absolute butter. One of the things I was thinking about doing, you start waiving them for countries like if they behave themselves like Iran.
Like, these are the sanctions. We're going to start waiving them for countries that behave themselves. Again, Israel attacked them unprovoked, completely unprovoked.
Start waiving them for countries like if they behave themselves like Iran, where they can sell oil and they can do the things that you want to be able to do. The sanctions are very powerful, and it makes it difficult. I'm not looking to make it difficult. I want them to have a good life, but they were trying to develop a bomb, and the reason you try and develop a bomb like that is to use it.
You tweeted, the Democrats leaked an
Or
intelligence.
to, stop the American and Israeli psychopaths from bombing your country.
Right. And dragging you through the streets and murdering you.
Dragging you through the streets and sticking a knife up your ass. It's what Gaddafi got for his deal making.
Exactly.
And trust in the U.S.
Exactly. So now here is the last part. Here's the threat against the leaker who told what is probably the truth, which is that the damage to those nuclear sites is much less than what he's saying.
Develop a bomb like that as he is.
You tweeted, the Democrats leaked an intelligence.
They should be prosecuted.
Who specifically? Do we know who did it? Will you be able to find out?
We can find out.
We could find out. It's probably Hillary and Obama, and maybe Biden, and maybe Schumer and Pelosi. You know what? Maybe all of them. I think all of them, Lee. I think we should just put them all in jail. Put all the Democrats in jail.
If they wanted, they could find out easily. You go up and tell the reporter, national security, who gave it. You have to do that. And I suspect we'll be doing things like that.
No, you'll suspect we'll be doing things like that. All right. So, folks, if you're not nervous enough already, this kind of came across the wire, or at least I saw it just before we went on. So I'm just going to screen share this. But here is Lindsey Graham on the Sunday show this morning, seeming to complicate the narrative that all of Iran's nuclear program has been decimated. Here he is. You can see where this is going, I bet.
About the uranium, where is that?
So the 900 pounds?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's at the bottom of Fordo or some other site, but it's still out there. But here's the big point for me.
And does that concern you? Is that
definitely. Operation Midnight Hammer was a tremendous military success. It set the program back, I think, a couple of years. But the question for the world, does the regime still desire to make a nuclear weapon? The answer is yes.
Okay, so what that means is that you're interested in swapping out the regime for one that doesn't want to make a nuclear weapon. We've seen this movie a million times.
For the world, does the regime still desire to make a nuclear weapon? The answer is yes. Do they still desire to destroy Israel and come after us? The answer is yes. Until that changes, we've got to keep we're in trouble.
But the president seems to say, look, they're done with it. But
See, I just saw that clip before we went on. I would have loved to have found the fuller version. I would have loved to see what he says when Jonathan Karl presses him. But the president says we've gotten all of it. Because I think Donald Trump is saying they got all of it to try and dissuade the Israelis from instigating again. And I think what Lindsey Graham is doing there, he's in an awkward spot there because obviously he has been salivating for a regime change war against Iran for a long time, but he doesn't want to directly contradict Donald Trump. But him saying, yeah, no, that uranium at Fordo, that's still out there, and yeah, they've been delayed, but they're going to keep at it. Obviously, Israel is going to continue agitating for an all-out war. The Israelis have wanted a regime change war with Iran for decades. We showed you tapes going back on 9/11. Netanyahu is coming out saying we need to neuter Iraq and Iran in the days after 9/11, within days. So what do you think? They are going to call it off because, well, we hit their nuclear sites and so we'll call it a day. I think that's what Trump is trying to do in order to kind of wiggle out of this. But I don't think it's going to work. I hate to be pessimistic and I hate to be alarmist about this, but I think by the end of the year, they are going to make another very serious effort to embroil us in a regime change war. That seems to be where this is going. That's what Israeli government officials are saying. Trump is leaving the option open. The Iranians are not going to enter into any kind of serious talks with us, as according to the reporting, which is something we could have obviously seen coming, that the diplomatic effects of this were going to be disastrous, whether or not it blows up into all-out World War III. And now you have, Lindsey there saying, yeah, maybe we got all the stuff, maybe we didn't. And, as long as this regime is in place that's going to try and develop a nuclear weapon, we have a problem. So this is not over yet. I think people breathing a sigh of relief, I think that is very premature.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's kind of amazing how much the Israelis and the Zionists generally have retreated into a bubble. I can see very clearly how almost day by day, week by week, and month by month, the overall hatred of the Israeli state and everything it's doing and everything it stands for grows and grows. I mean, we're going to cover Glastonbury later on, like, man, I mean, they not only lost the conversation. I mean, you have some of them going to Greece. They're getting yelled at by the people in Greece. Everywhere they go, they're getting denied service in hotels. They're getting denied service in restaurants. What do they think is going to happen if they go to war with Iran? I mean, I know what they're thinking. They're saying, well, the Americans did what they did to the Native Americans and many other, the Australians. Who holds the Australians accountable today for the Aborigines? They do a little land acknowledgement, but they have the land now. Right? So we'll do a land acknowledgement one day, right? They think it's going to end like that. It's not the fucking 19th century. It's not going to play out like that. The world is too interconnected. And we're living in a world of social media and cameras and videos that go around the world. And yeah, man, it's not going to play out like that. I know some people think I'm being too optimistic. I don't think so, man. The Israeli state in its current form as an apartheid Jewish state, I'm pretty convinced will not exist in 10 years. And I think that's a generous timeline. So watching this is like the end game, man. This is just like watching people light themselves on fire and think that they're going to come out the other side not burned. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, the big problem with this, though, is the Samson option and the fact that they have nukes. They have nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
And so there's no telling what damage they can do to the world on their way out if they choose to pursue this path, which is why I do think Trump, look, I think Trump is compromised. I think he acts as an agent of Israel, but I do think he is trying to scramble out of this. Whether or not he can is almost a function of the American people as much as it is him. This is why we just have to say in one voice, this is not acceptable. It's not acceptable. We're going to get into in the next piece, the War Powers Resolution failed. That's a disgrace. That's a disgrace. We're going to get into some polling that is very discouraging as well. And this is what I mean. Right? Because it didn't get into World War III, the chuds all went out there and acted like he's a big peacemaker and he got this big win. This is not over. If you know anything about Israel, you know what their MO is to make ceasefires and break ceasefires. That is what they do. So that they could say, well, we had an agreement and then you backed out and so we had to strike it. This is what they've done to the Palestinians throughout the past 77 years and before the formal recognition of Israel. And this is what they're doing right now. They're saying it. They're saying it. Israel Katz says, if we feel threatened, we reserve the right to strike them again. And talks have broken down, which is what we knew was going to happen. Who's going to enter into talk? Who's going to come back to the negotiating table with us after we backed Israel when they jumped the gun and attacked their state? They killed hundreds of innocent civilians in an unprovoked bombing campaign. So, of course, they're not going to talk with us, which means now you're in a situation where you operate at the whim of the Israelis if you're Donald Trump, because now all they have to say is, well, we feel like they're working on a bomb again. That's why I think Trump is so insistent that no, we took all the material out. It was a major success. That's it. We did it. It's done. I don't think he's steering the ship. I think it's pretty clear that Israel is steering the ship, and so it's still a very scary situation.
Well, this is why when you talk to Zionists, they really live in a parallel reality where Israel are just, babes in the woods, always trying to have a ceasefire. Right. And gosh darn it, those barbaric, misled Arabs, they just betray the ceasefire every time. And the poor Israelis are dragged into doing what they have to. They keep reaching out for peace. No, really. I mean, you talk to
of course.
This is what they believe. Or for that matter, you talk to Israelis. Most of them believe that narrative. They will tell you, it's one of the first things they'll tell you, how many ceasefires that have been broken that they tried to engage in good faith.
Right, exactly. The we don't have a partner in peace, that whole thing. Whole thing. Brad Gilbert says, "Build back better, billionaires branding bees with all the sixes. If you know, you know." Thank you, Brad. Russell's Peasant Mind says, "Did Russell just say peasant? I'm here, my lord." Thank you, Russell's Peasant Mind. Brad Gilbert says, "SS Ponzi scheme backfired because we live longer now." They can make Social Security solvents by very, very easily. Very, very easily. They just have to lift the cap on the payroll tax, basically. Only now people's first $175,000 of income per year is taxed for Social Security, which means people who are making 10 times that, they only pay into Social Security for the first $175,000. So if you lifted that cap, you could make it solvent through the end of the century just by doing that. Very easy. Very easy. William Ellick, thanks for the $5. Keep speaking the ugly truth. It's the Truman Show. Please play the Trump snake poem for the Trump D-Riders. Trump is in the club. Love the show. Thank you, William Ellick. Appreciate that. Very much. Okay. Let's see. Dirtbags, the bottom line, all of this Patriot Act, Palantir surveillance state shit is that the elite are scared shitless of us. Do not forget that. Now go back to porn and scrolling cat videos. Thank you. Hillary Hitton. Brown, no. GOP is a party that can be summarized in two genders: well-groomed asshole in suit, crazy bitch with cross in cleavage. There you go. Thank you, Professor Brown. No. BBB sounds like a Pornhub category where we take it in the SPOV style. Thank you, Eric Rousseau. Appreciate that. Okay. We are going to move right on along here because this is kind of a B part to that segment. So the last segment, folks, we detailed why I think, and I think I could speak for Russell, that, this Israel-Iran truce is tenuous at best, which is why it is especially disgraceful that the War Powers resolution that Tim Kaine raised in the Senate has failed. Senate blocks War Powers resolution to limit Trump's ability to strike Iran again. The Senate on Friday blocked a Democratic resolution that would have forced President Trump to go to Congress for approval of further military action against Iran, dealing a blow to efforts to rein in his war powers. The 53-47 vote against bringing up the resolution, mostly along party lines, came nearly a week after the president unilaterally ordered strikes against 3 Iranian nuclear facilities without consulting the House and Senate. It also followed a searing debate on the Senate floor over the role of Congress in authorizing the use of military force. So it was a strict party line vote with one exception on each side. I bet you can guess who the lone Republican yes vote was and who the lone Democratic no vote was. Not too hard to figure out if you're paying attention. Rand Paul voted yes, and John Fetterman voted no. So that was pretty obvious that those were going to be the dissenters. It was a question, would there be any more? And you got your answer. No. Strict party line vote except for those 2 men. Yes, exactly.
That was Fetterman on the floor of the House.
Yes, that was his
voicing
comment.
his opposition to the bill.
Yeah, exactly.
He hasn't missed a step from that stroke.
Has not missed a step. That's right. Here is the real life John Fetterman talking about Tim Kaine's War Powers resolution, explaining in very eloquent terms, of course, why he is going to vote no.
Which will come up tomorrow night.
Well, I'll say this. I love that man, and he's coming in from a very principled side.
I love that man. I love Tim Kaine. I'm saying, I love that man.
He's coming in from a very principled side, but I'm going to vote no on that, simply because I would never want to restrict any future president, Republican or Democrat, to do this kind of a military exercise.
Why would you want to do that?
Yeah, why would you want to do that? Like, the whole point of the vote is to set a precedent that no president can just unilaterally attack. Yeah. That's the whole point of the Constitution. Yeah.
That's why would you want to exercise your powers as a congressperson, as a senator? Yeah,
like it's the dumbest reason you could possibly think of. Well, I just don't want to set a precedent that that the Constitution must be followed. I think that's a dangerous precedent to set that, hey, if Donald Trump doesn't get to just bomb countries on a whim, that means no president gets to bomb countries on a whim. Yeah, that's the whole point.
Once you start going down that road, we might start having to be responsive to our voters.
Exactly, yeah. Like, that's the whole point
of
why Congress declares war. That's why Congress has the power to declare war. For exactly what you're saying. Except you're saying this is why you're going to vote no.
Any future president, Republican or Democrat, to do this kind of a military kind of exercise that was very successful.
Wow. Every time I see this guy, I think Dr. Oz lost to this guy. There's a guy who ran against this guy and lost. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine running against him and losing?
And the guy lost on one word. Crudité.
Crudité, that's right.
Crudité cost him the race.
That cost him everything. The measure, sponsored by Senator Tim Kaine, Democrat of Virginia, invoked the War Powers Act, a 1973 law aimed at limiting a president's power to enter an armed conflict without the consent of Congress. It would have required the White House to notify lawmakers and seek the approval of both the House and Senate before U.S. forces could take further military action against Iran. Earlier this week, Mr. Kaine said if the Senate voted to take up his resolution, he would modify it to include language that affirmed the president's authority to act in self-defense. He clarified that it did not limit U.S. support for Israel or any defensive measures it might take against Iran or its proxies. That was in part an effort to unite Democrats around the measure, even though the party is deeply divided over supporting Israel. So he turned it into a bullshit resolution, and it still failed. Still, the resolution had little chance of success in Republican-led Congress that has split bitterly along partisan lines over the strikes, with most GOP lawmakers, even anti-interventionists on the far right, supporting Mr. Trump's actions, and many Democrats outraged about them. War is too big an issue to leave to the moods and whims and the daily vibes of any one person, Mr. Kaine said ahead of the vote. And here is what is very depressing about this. So now that we don't have World War III here, more Americans oppose the U.S. strikes on Iran as MAGA supporters line up with Trump. So it's still true, thankfully, that most Americans oppose those strikes, but MAGA pretty much fell in line. Do you support or oppose the United States bombing nuclear sites in Iran? Support 38% strong, 26 somewhat at 12. Unsure 18%, and then 45 opposed, with the strongly opposed being the largest section there at 34 points. So now, if you poll Republicans, do you support or oppose the United States bombing nuclear sites in Iran? More of a supporter of the MAGA movement, 70% of MAGA Republicans say that they strongly support the U.S. airstrikes, which is weird because only 49% of more traditional Republicans, if you want to call them that. I mean, Donald Trump's been leader of the party for 10 years, so it's kind of difficult to say which is which. But 49% of non-MAGA Republicans strongly support the strikes. And if you add somewhat support, that adds 14%. So that means the MAGA Republicans are 84% behind these strikes now, which is more than the non-MAGA Republicans, which is very strange because we always thought that the non-MAGA Republicans were the Nikki Haley Republicans, were the George Bush Republicans, were the John McCain, were the neocons, right? The neocons were supposed to love this, and the MAGA people were supposed to be against this. Not the case now. Not the case now.
Okay, so my theory of the case here would be, at this point already, this administration has been so awful that only the cultists are describing themselves as MAGA at this point. And they don't actually have an ideology other than man love for Trump. If Trump does it, they're going to like it. It doesn't matter what it is at this point. We've seen many former MAGA people in our comments saying that's it. As soon as he bombed Iran, we had a lot of them saying, yeah, I'm done with him. I'll never vote for anybody again. So the people who are still like, yeah, I'm MAGA, sure. Wouldn't matter what he did.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, you could be right about that. That maybe what explains this is that MAGA now has become truly a cult, because anyone who was not so cultish as to blindly support these U.S. airstrikes no longer identifies that way. That is possible. That is certainly possible. If Iran's nuclear program remains intact after U.S. airstrikes, do you believe the United States should continue military operations to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon? This is where the polling gets pretty depressing. Only 41% says no. The United States should not take any further military action. A combined 60% say yes in some capacity. 34 say yes, but only continue with airstrikes. And 26 say yes, the U.S. should consider all options, including the use of ground forces. Oy vey. See? This is what you're up against, folks. This is what we warned you about. Do you support or oppose the United States bombing nuclear sites in Iran? Among Democrats, more a supporter of the progressive movement. 75% say no, the United States should not take any further military action. And 54% of the traditional Democrats, the more moderate Democrats, say no, which is a fairly low number in itself. But now what you're seeing here is you're starting to see a similar dynamic set in as was the case during the Bush years, where just like the Democrats by default are nominally against this, the elected officials, of course, being extremely weak, extremely mealy-mouthed. Chuck Schumer chiding Trump for making a side deal, whatever the hell he was talking about that. No side deals. And then you got Hakeem Jeffries, saying, look, our commitment to Israel has to remain ironclad. Iran is an enemy of the United States, blah, 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 but still voting for this war powers bill. Again, it's starting to look a lot like 2003. Way too much. Way too much. And just in case you thought that was an outlier, it is not. CBS News poll, do you approve or disapprove of U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities? Republicans plus 70. 85% of Republicans approve of the airstrikes. 94% of avowed MAGA Republicans approve of the airstrikes. And this is partly why. This is partly why. Because we're not in World War III, you had these morons come out and take a victory lap. Iran gave President Trump no choice. For a decade, he has been adamant that Iran will never get a nuclear weapon. Iran decided to forgo diplomacy in pursuit of a bomb. This is a surgical strike operated perfectly. President Trump acted with prudence and decisiveness. And now you have Matt Gaetz coming out. President Trump basically wants this to be like the Soleimani strike, one and done. No regime change, war. So, just like the left has sheepdogs for the Democrats, the right has sheepdogs for the GOP. Matt Gaetz came out and he said, look, he called Israel out. He said, hey, look, one way to denuclearize the Middle East would be for you guys to denuclearize yourselves. That's all good. At the end of the day, he's there for Donald Trump, just like at the end of the day, AOC is there for Kamala. She's there for Biden. It all a lot of these commentators in the space, they all line up behind the Democrat in the end. There's the same dynamic going on the right. And I am personally concerned that because this latest salvo, this latest exchange, thankfully, knock on wood, thankfully, did not blow up in the World War III, that a lot of the MAGA people who were sounding the alarms about this, are now lulled into a false sense of, well, I guess Trump really is the peace candidate. I guess he's got this after all. He doesn't got this. He doesn't got this. He's still being led around by a foreign power that is hell-bent on overthrowing the Iranian government. And they have been chirping quite loudly about that since this ceasefire came into being, to the point where Trump had to curse them out on TV because they essentially violated it as soon as they signed it. He had to warn them, hey, let's try to figure out another way. And I do believe that is Trump's goal. If he had it to do his way, he would not start World War III. The rub here is that he is compromised and he is being led around by them. He is answering to Israel. That's obvious. And so it's going to take massive public pressure to prevent this from coming back in a way that does embroil us in a regime change war. You know, I know it's a cliche, but, you know, bookmark this segment because I have a feeling it's going to become an emergency again, I would say, by the end of the year. And this polling is not encouraging. It's not encouraging.
Donald, you didn't forget about the Polaroids, did you?
Yeah,
We still
exactly,
have
man.
them.
Like
We can release them anytime. No, I sent Keaton earlier. There's what's the name of that reporter?
What's the yeah, what's his name? Michael Wolff. Yeah.
Yeah, he was doing an interview, and he says that he personally saw these photos that were taken of Trump during his relationship with Epstein sometime between 1999 and 2001 that show him with, being a fan of the playground in Polaroids. We don't know if it's true, but it seems pretty consistent with what we know about Epstein, what we know about Mossad. We know that Trump hung out with him pretty hard. What are the odds they don't have blackmail material? Because Trump is a guy who, if you look at his MO, if you look at the mentality of his whole administration, they're like gangsters. They want you to show submission to them in order to deal with them. That's how they handled Liberation Day, right?
Yeah.
Hey, if you don't do anything, if you don't retaliate, then you're going to get a good deal. If you retaliate, you're in fucking trouble, right? So he deals with Israel uniquely. This one country, is it just the money? He gets money from a lot of people, and then look what he's doing to Elon. Look what he's doing to Elon.
Yeah, exactly,
like, that he's not a guy to really care, especially when he doesn't have to run again. His concern is not for anyone but himself, and for him politically, what does it matter? He doesn't need any of these people again. Why is he this subservient to Israel? You look at the Epstein connection, makes a lot of sense that's why.
The whole way he has gone about this is very un-Trump-like. From the lifeless way in which he kept repeating, Iran can't have a nuclear weapon.
Right.
And then through the first days of the war, he was basically hiding from the cameras. He didn't want to show his face. He didn't want to have to come out and take questions about this or even make a definitive statement about this. When you combine that with the fact that he is insisting that these nuclear sites are destroyed, that's his way of saying, it's over, it's done with, we did it, they have no nuclear program, moving on, right? And the third thing is this now repeated insistence that the charges against Bibi get dropped in Israel.
Right.
You know, it's common knowledge in Israel, Bibi keeps these wars going to avoid prosecution. Bill Clinton said that. They say he keeps the wars going so he could stay in power, so he doesn't have to stand trial. So I feel very strongly that the reason Donald Trump is pushing to get the charges dropped is to give Netanyahu an off-ramp. Say, okay, listen, they're not going to throw your ass in jail now, so stop the wars. You can afford to stop it now. When you add those three things together, yeah, it seems like Donald Trump doesn't want war, but he also knows that when push comes to shove, he has to give Israel what they want. That's how he's handling this. That's what it looks like to me. Doesn't look like Donald Trump is leading the charge into war. It looks like Donald Trump is being led around by an entity that owns his ass and is trying to figure out a way to wiggle out of it. That's what it looks like to me.
Yep.
All right. Why don't we move on to some Rumble rants here? Otacon, a bunch of gun tubers are mad pissed about the suppressor bait and switch, saying primary them or don't vote at all in the midterms unless we get it back. Bad news for Trump. Oh, he's got that. He's got a lot of problems now. He's got them. Oy. To kick Elon out and not even giving a few tax credits after giving $300 million and the Twitter algorithm, but did a war with Iran that split his base for Israel means Trump effed. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Right. I mean, that's what we were saying. That's what Russell just said, that he would screw over Elon, who gave him $300 million, but he won't screw the Israelis.
What do they got on him?
Yeah, exactly. Emma Vigeland got married, the final nail in the coffin of my unrequited love. Oh, I'm sorry,
oh my God.
Flowers for dead, Ahmad.
The poor bastard. What
Eric
poor
Husso.
son of a bitch married that woman?
Well,
wow.
to each his own. Make America feudal again, says Eric Rousseau. Thank you for that. Free shit 77. Why the fuck would anyone still be on Facebook? Use Google or PayPal. Thank you, free shit 77. In Israel's defense, it probably wouldn't take too many handles of Jack to convince Pete Hegseth to change his names to America Dogs, or at least get it tatted. Good one. Eric Rousseau says, why would Iran or any country ever trust America? Exactly.
Yep.
Professor Brown note says the Middle Eastern problem is all about timing. If all neighbors just fired everything at the exact same time on Israel, Bob's your uncle, or has that ship sailed? Well, there's Samson. Look, Israel has nukes. This is the whole thing. The whole Middle East could just denuclearize if Israel would agree to give up their program. But they won't. Instead, they gaslight about how they don't really have one when everybody knows they do. I'll admit Trump impressed me. I didn't think he actually knew what the word ignominious meant. Yeah, there you go. That was a $64 word there. America is a cult sans the sex orgy. Thank you, Eric Rousseau. Appreciate that. Vito says if this president gig doesn't work out, Trump could always get a job writing Christmas cards. Cancer sucks. You guys rock. Thank you, Vito. Appreciate that.
Thank you, man.
Very much. All right, what do we got here? Brad Gilbert, thanks for the $2, says Katz and BB Gun Netanyahu are Uncle Jimbo and Ned. Yeah, that's a good one. I like that one. Nice South Park reference there. B. Vaccaro says communist candidate just won the left presidential primary here in Chile. The right didn't do a primary, so we'll be cannibalizing right votes in first round. Interesting. Thank you for that update. Appreciate that, Vaccaro. I'll have to look into that. Maybe I'll put Chile on the list of expat locations. Where can I get me one of them sleeper cells, says Michael Mike. I wake up at 2 a.m. and can't get back to sleep. Good one. By the way, YouTube wouldn't let me use the I word with sleeper cell. Interesting. Thank you, Michael. Now the IDF is into fisting. Iron Fist? Haha, good one. Steve Bertram, still think you do a great job of covering most issues, but your coverage of the reactions of MAGA is so pointless and counterproductive to solidarity. I don't agree. I think it should get off the pot time, and I think if you are supporting Trump at this point, then tough love is in order. That's what I think.
If there's any bunch of boys that appreciate a good spanking, it's them.
Exactly. You see, now they're sharing AI renderings of the alligator Alcatraz with the crocodiles in the moat. I mean, these people are fucking sick, and I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. Lindsey Graham wishes it was called Midnight Cruising, named after the 1980 film with Al Pacino. Thank you, Virtuoso. Appreciate that.
You notice the viral short has attracted a swarm of Israeli bots.
What viral short?
The ours. The
we had our
rights
short
one.
Yeah.
No, I didn't used to be hip to it. Now I am. Like when you get again and again and again and again the same theme.
Right.
It's a bot swarm. We're getting a swarm of bots saying, what about equal rights in the Middle East? What about there are 50 Saudi countries? Like it's too much the same to be organic. It doesn't make sense.
Right. Yes, that's probably true. Okay. All right. Let's move right on along. Hey, speaking of Zohran Mamdani, we got some updates on that front.
All right. So you might remember that Zohran Mamdani, during the very first primary, made quite a splash by being one of the few candidates on stage not to say he'd run to Israel as his first foreign trip as New York City mayor.
You go first, left to right, the Saturns.
First visit, I would visit the Holy Land.
Mr. Cuomo?
Given the hostility and the anti-Semitism that has been shown in New York, I would go to Israel.
Mr. Tilson, where would you go?
Yeah, I'd make my 4th trip to Israel, followed by my 5th trip to Ukraine, two of our greatest allies fighting on the front lines of the global war on terror.
Mr. Mamdani.
I would stay in New York City. My plans are to address New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs and focus on that.
Mr. Mamdani, can I just jump in? Would you visit Israel? As mayor?
I will be doing, as the mayor, I'll be standing up for Jewish New Yorkers, and I'll be meeting them wherever they are across the 5 boroughs, whether that's in their synagogues and temples or at their homes or at the subway platform, because ultimately we need to focus on delivering on their concerns.
And just yes or no, do you believe in a Jewish state of Israel?
I believe Israel has the right to exist.
Not
as a Jewish state?
Notice.
As a state with equal rights.
He won't, he
Not
won't
as a
say it
Jewish
has
state.
a right to exist as a Jewish state. Be very
And
clear
his
on
answer
that.
was no, he won't visit Israel.
I said that very
That's what he was
clearly.
trying to say.
No. Unlike
No,
you, I
you
answer.
never-
Unlike
you
you, I
never
answer
said
questions
no.
very
Okay.
directly,
All right, I
and
think
I
we're
want to
clear.
be
You
very
answered-
clear. I
you answered-
believe every state should be a state of
Would
equal
visit
rights.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Uzbekistan or
Mamdani.
wherever he's from.
All right, little. Oh, I'm sorry.
My goal would be to take my first trip to Israel. My wife's life work in this area means a lot to our family, and it could coincide with my young son Miles' bar mitzvah, if you'd like to have his bar mitzvah.
Okay, about a minute.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, man. Like, look.
What do you have to say to people who claim you're a walking, talking stereotype? Well, I'll tell you, I don't really like that kind of talk.
I mean, the fact that one after the other just said they go to Israel and they all ate shit. I mean, come on. You guys can't take some joy in that. Put a smile on your face, okay?
That's what I'm saying. These miserable bastards.
Yeah, like
miserable bastards. They just have to ruin everyone's good time.
Have a little fun. Won't kill you.
In the words of Dr. Frankenfooter, it's not easy having a good time. Even smiling makes my face ache.
There's all this straw manning. Oh, we can't fall in love with him. We can't fall for him. We can't, put our trust in him. Nobody. I don't see anybody really saying that. What I see people
we're
doing,
psychopaths. We don't
Right.
have the capacity to fall in love with anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't even understand it.
What I see is people relishing in the fact that one stooge after the other who went on there and pandered to Israel, they all ate shit. They all ate shit.
Right. Exactly. All right. So Marjorie Taylor Greene went on with Tucker Carlson and praised Zohran Mamdani's campaign for not bowing to Israel.
Like desperate for government-run grocery stores, or love socialism, or love like foreign-born midwits running their cities? Probably not. That guy was the only person in the New York City mayor's debate to say he wanted to focus on New York City. All the candidates were asked, if you could visit a foreign country, what would it be? And they, of course, all had an answer. I think most said Israel. Great. And he said, I wouldn't go anywhere. I'd stay in New York. And like, if I want to meet Jewish constituents, I go to their synagogues, their homes, or whatever. But I'd be here in New York because that's what I'm doing. I'm running New York. That's my job.
Well, he gave the right answer.
He gave the right answer. He gave the right answer, at least. And he's talking. I totally oppose his program.
Absolutely.
To be clear. I don't think it works. But he's talking about economics.
Yep.
And everyone else is talking about foreign policy. Why is it hard to talk about economics, domestic economics?
I don't know. Apparently they don't know how to fix it. Well, look who he was running against.
I think it's because your party wants to throw 11 million people off of Medicaid and wants to charge the people who stay on a $35 copay when they take their kid to the doctor.
Okay, this is the thing. In the B part of this, where I'm going to give more of a breakdown on developments of the campaign, I'm going to get more into the economics. It just baffles me when you get people who represent a completely failed status quo, because they might deny it, but you cannot really legitimately argue that the way the country generally has been run over the last 30 years or so is not much closer to your economics, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson,
of course,
than they are to Mamdani's. And that goes triple for New York City. That was completely transformed by its billionaire mayor, Michael Bloomberg, into what he called a luxury product. Right? That is how this place has been governed. And we just hit record rents for the third month in a row. So you can scoff at someone else's ideas when your ideas haven't been tried, or when your ideas have been tried and worked well. They haven't. They haven't. So who the fuck are you to talk about what works and what doesn't? Your economics have been completely discredited, and the president you support is poised to hyper accelerate the neoliberal nightmare that we live in by taking it to its logical conclusion of kicking everybody off health care and food stamps.
Exactly.
Who are you to talk about his economics? What credibility do you have? So, okay, moving along.
He's looking, I mean, the failed mayor, Andrew Cuomo, look at him. He
Governor,
was
yeah.
governor. discussing sexual, all types of accusations.
Yeah.
So he was seen as the dirty establishment Democrat,
the
right?
Machine politician.
Right, right. That really never solved anyone's problems. They already had him, and they still have the same problems.
Right.
They're still poor. They can't afford life. They can't afford to move up in the world. And so they.
Okay, and can you explain to me exactly what Cuomo's economics were? Because it sounds a lot like what the people who oppose Mamdani say is better for people, right? Giving a free hand to developers is going to bring down the rent. How's that been working out?
Right.
We just hit 3 months in a row record high rent. We have the New York State has the highest wealth inequality in the country. Are you seriously going to argue that New York has not been run by neoliberal economic philosophies for at least 20 years? This is where it's gotten us.
Looked at Andrew Cuomo and was like, why am I going to vote for him? He's not going to make my life better.
No, it's
and so
All
they
right,
look
so
at
you're
this,
conceding that your economics
this
are
man
completely
who's
wrong.
been in our country for what, 6 years?
Yeah.
6 years. So he's foreign born. He's a socialist, and he's promising to empty the prisons and do all kinds of crazy things. And he's talking to them on their level and talking about the problems they are facing, relating to them with the problems they're facing. So these young people have no choice but to turn to this.
I agree.
And it is a failure. It is literally a failure of the Republican Party. I think the Republican Party has completely failed. And it makes me so angry, Tucker. And I can't, I'm not supposed to speak out, right? I'm not supposed to have my own opinion. I'm supposed to just have blind allegiance to my party, and I'm supposed to cheerlead and rah, rah, rah. But that.
Hang on. So Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has been so outspoken about war with Iran and war with Israel, did she sign on to that war powers resolution?
No.
Did she sign on to that?
No. She made up a bullshit excuse that because we're not at war yet, she doesn't have to, which the whole point of the resolution was to prevent war.
I see. So the independent fighting against the deep state establishment, Marjorie Taylor Greene, given the opportunity to actually do something concrete, did nothing.
Right. This is sheepdogging. This is sheepdogging on the other side. This is the AOC of the other side. Oh, I'm going to come out here and talk about what a failure the party is. Don't worry, I'll be there when I have to be.
Right.
Or if you have enough votes to pass it without me, I'll take a symbolic present or no vote. But I'm there. I'm there when you need me. She fucking posts a picture of the Statue of Liberty in a burqa.
We're getting to
That's not why I ran. That's not why I ran for Congress in the first place. I literally ran because I was mad at Republicans.
Yeah.
Well, I'm still mad at Republicans.
Oh, that's nice.
Because it is affecting our children's lives and future. And it's our job to hold our elected leaders accountable. It's my job to hold my colleagues accountable. And if we don't fix these problems to the point where young people are turning to crazy socialists, it's going to get worse. It's literally going to get worse, and it'll be gone. I don't think we could ever get it back.
All right, well, I expect to see her screaming about these Medicaid cuts then this week.
Oh, yeah.
Prove me wrong. Do it. I would love for you to prove me wrong. Do it. Go ahead. I want to see viral clips of her screaming about the Medicaid cuts.
It's just such a ridiculous argument to make. That New York was ruled by Giuliani for 8 years. Then it was ruled by Bloomberg for 12 years. 20 freaking years. The city was shaped by that period. The city we have today was shaped by that period. How has that worked out for people? You're gonna cry crocodile tears now for the fact that the city's not affordable? Well, what ideas do you have that are not in line with Bloomberg's or Giuliani's about hire lots of cops, crack heads, and give a free hand to the developers? Isn't that your program?
Right.
Isn't that your program? How is that not in line with your philosophy? So your philosophy has failed, right? You're talking about Cuomo. Cuomo didn't do anything for people. Yeah, because he had your economics.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
So she, so misreasonable, as Keith was saying, put out this picture that went very viral of the Statue of Liberty in a burqa. So she was actually asked about this during an interview on The Hill's Rising.
Congresswoman, we just have to fit in one other question before we let you go. Yesterday morning, which is, of course, the morning after Zohran Mamdani's win in New York, you did tweet a photo or an image of the Statue of Liberty in a burqa, and you added the caption or comment, "This hits hard." What did you mean by that?
Well, I'm an American woman, and I have all the freedoms in the
Debatable.
world to never have to bow to a religion that would force me to cover my body up and only see my eyes.
That would be like some Ace Ventura shit if she did a big reveal that she had a cock.
Yeah.
And my fingertips.
The name of the guy in there?
And that is
That was Sean Young. Sean Young.
No, I'm talking about the character in the movie. I forget the name. Anyway.
a major threat for all American women. And I think that's something that hits hard for all women.
But what's a major threat to America?
In Afghanistan,
was it reference to
girls and
Mamdani's win?
Pardon, I'm sorry.
What were you tweeting it in reference to? When you say it's a threat to American women,
that's a Muslim takeover or possibly Sharia law. That is a great threat to every single American woman. And I think that's something all women should never want or allow to happen in America. And it's important to talk about those things.
But it's up to the voters of New York City to elect whoever they wish to elect, whether that person is Muslim or Christian or Jewish or anything else. So what is the evidence?
Well, of course, voters have the right to elect that. And I'll maintain my right to say that I think Sharia law and women being forced to wear burqas is the greatest threat to our freedoms as American women.
Right, but are you opposed to Muslims holding elected office?
I am 100% opposed to Sharia law in America.
Yeah, that's going to happen.
Unapologetically
that's what he's running on.
opposed
He's
to
running
Sharia
on
law
that.
in America.
Yeah, that is the greatest threat to American women, and that is what Mamdani represent. So Michael Tracy is going to get a lot of love in these next couple of segments because he has commented on this race with his usual sharp, insightful wit. If you don't like Zohran Mamdani's policy views or ideology, okay. But shrieking about Sharia law taking over New York City just confirms you're a blubbering idiot. Case in point, I'm pretty sure this was taken today because today was New York City's Pride Parade. Here's the man that Marjorie Taylor Greene and some others are claiming is going to usher in Sharia law to New York City.
Sharia law.
I'll take out the sound in case.
That's Sharia law.
Sharia law there. He's going to usher in Sharia law. So, yeah, they are attacking him on exactly the wrong grounds. Now, I'm going to get into what you could attack him on in the next segment. The Democrats, because really this is a race between Democrats because it's New York. They're not able to go after him on the things you could go after him on because their base support a lot of those things. And I think it is an open question whether some of his cultural positions would even be damaging to him with the voters he has. You sent over that graphic to me right before we went on that he had historically high youth voter turnout. That it was a very odd situation where young people are more aligned with him on a lot of those cultural positions. But the more you attack him on he wants to have cheap grocery stores and he wants to freeze the rent, like who do you really think is against that? But Marjorie Taylor Greene, there's this tendency, even with a lot of people who think of themselves as left or not, conventional Democrats, there is something in people on the left where a lot of them just really are dying to show some kind of fealty or affinity with right-wing figures. Like you pull out Marjorie Taylor Greene, you go, look what Marjorie Taylor Greene says. She's so right. You'll have all these people on the left who'll be like, yeah, that was really based what she said. You could pull out AOC or Elizabeth Warren saying something that is correct, and they have a fucking meltdown. They're just dying to bow to the right wing for some reason.
Yeah, no, and you know, it's
look what Josh Hawley said.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. Right. Right. Exactly. And look, it's one thing if these right-wing figures actually like
follow through,
planted their flag in the ground and took a stand when it mattered.
Massey,
That'd be a different.
I can understand saying nice things about Massey.
Right, like with Massey, because he actually takes a stand. He doesn't bluff. Yes. He doesn't posture like he's gonna, you know, do something good and then, you know, folds under pressure. Just the way Marjorie Taylor Greene does. Just the way the squad does on the left. Like, you don't get points for rhetoric if you don't follow through, and the stakes here are very high. The fact that Marjorie Taylor Greene did not commit to signing on to that War Powers resolution, that is her Iron Dome moment. Right. The way AOC had the Iron Dome moment where she was cucked by Nancy Pelosi into voting president, that's the same thing. Why, if you're against the war, wouldn't you vote for that? Why wouldn't you vote to give Congress a check over the president if you don't trust him not to embroil us in a regime change war? There's no reason for it. No reason except that you don't really mean what you say. You don't really mean what you say. You go and say, yeah, no, he took the right position on that. He took the America First position on the would you visit Israel question. I applaud him for that. That's why I tweeted out a picture of the Statue of Liberty in a burqa after he won in order to just appeal to the rankest bigotry amongst my dumbest followers that, look, the Muslim one, that means Sharia law in New York. Like, you're not serious. That's the opposite of follow through. That's a betrayal of what you just said on Tucker Carlson. So yeah, no, I'm sick of giving these people credit when they don't have follow through. If you have follow through, it's a different story.
Sure,
but she has no follow through.
And really, the only ones who have follow through are Rand Paul and Massey.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep. 100%. All right, we can go right into the B.
Okay. So here's Eric Adams giving his kind of theory of the case here. And there's something that you're probably going to notice. Now, Eric Adams, don't forget, was a Republican for most of his life. He was a Republican for 20 years because it is such a Democrat skewed city. He became a Democrat in order to have a political future, and it worked out for him. But if you listen to what he says here, this is just classic Republican bootstrap shit.
Fantasy state. This election not a fantasy state. This election is a choice between those who believe in this city and those who don't. Let me tell you something. This is a city not of socialism. No. I've been to socialist countries. This is a city where you could come as a dishwasher and you can own a chain of restaurants. This is a city where you can be a cab driver and then become a doctor. This is a city where you could go from homelessness to building housing. This is a city where you could be a young person who's dyslexic, a young person who was rejected, and eventually to be elected to be the mayor of the city of New York. This is the type of city we're in. This is not a city where you use idealism to state you're giving everything to everyone for free. There's no dignity in someone giving you everything for free. There's dignity in giving you a job so you can provide for your family and the opportunities that you deserve. So this is not a city of handouts. This is a city of hands up. We're going to lift up the city of New York. And so I'm asking you, New Yorkers, to continue to stand with me as we move this city in the right direction. I'm ready to be your mayor again for another.
Okay. The New York that he is describing does not exist at this point. That New York does not exist. I tell this story, people want to stab me. I came home from Chicago in the mid-'90s with $15 in my pocket. I got a job driving a horse and carriage. Within a year and a half, I was able to get my first theater on 4th Street. The rent was $1,200 a month. I was able to quit my job within 3 weeks. 6 months later, I got my second theater on 4th Street, $3,500 a month. Another 6 months after that, I got another theater on 8th Street that I was paying $3,500 a month on. That is freaking impossible today. You could never, I couldn't do what I did then, and I have a lifetime of experience now. I did that in my 20s. Those opportunities are not there today. Like, yeah, man, if you want to, you do have immigrants who come to this city who are willing to live 10 people in an apartment and, work 12, 16 hours a day to maybe eventually own their own bodega. Yeah, I mean, you could do that. You know what? You could do that other places too, and probably a lot cheaper and not have to work that many hours.
Oh yeah.
Like what he is describing is a New York that's been gone for decades because of people like Eric Adams.
Right.
Because of people like him. You're talking about a city where you got the rent, the average rent, as we will see, it's over $4,000 a month. How is that a city of opportunities?
Yeah, you could be a dishwasher and then own restaurants. If all you are is a dishwasher at one job, you will literally be homeless in New York City. You cannot afford to you cannot afford to pay your rent as a dishwasher in New York City. If you have two dishwasher jobs, you may be able to piece it together. If you work 80 hours a week, you can get the rent and the bills paid and have essentially no money left over at the end of the month. Like, you could live paycheck to paycheck if all you do every waking hour is work. But that's what it takes to live in New York City as a dishwasher. The idea that you're going to have the room to save and own your own, it's fantasy. It's nonsense.
Of course.
It's boomer bullshit is what it is.
Of course.
That's what this is. This is a 20th century way of thinking, a 20th century view of the world that bears no resemblance to reality anymore, which is why the young people overwhelmingly voted for Mamdani. And luckily, the young people, for a change, outvoted the old people. And that's why he won.
You used to have these pockets of the city that were affordable, man. I mean, even into the 90s, an apartment in Hell's Kitchen was like $500 a month.
Yep.
Right? And it's not like the wages were equivalently low. The rent has exploded. And honestly, the wages are really not much higher, if at all, than they were then. I'm not kidding. In the 90s. So this is Mamdani's response to some of that
argument, but to deliver on the mandate of
when
this
Mayor
campaign.
Adams, you just heard him come out and he said soup, silver spoon. He talked about manicured nails to refer to you, right? You were. I was looking at him. You can show him to everybody. What do you say to him?
You know, I understand what he's doing. He's trying to distract from his own record. His is a record where he raised rents on more than 2 million New Yorkers by 9%, and he's considering another 8% increase. His is a record of raising the water bill to the highest it's been in 13 years, supporting Con Edison when they wanted to increase New Yorkers' gas and electric bills by $65 a month. I would much rather talk about me than I would about his record if I was him. And so that's what he's going to be doing over the next few months. And we will continue to remind New Yorkers what's on the ballot. It's affordability.
I just want to play, because that's what this.
You know, I got to say, man, Mamdani, for the level, I mean, he's not a newbie. He's been an assemblyman, but that guy is fucking smooth for somebody with his level of experience. Because he's making the rounds now. I've seen him in multiple interviews. That guy never gets rattled, man. I mean, we saw that at the Tesla rally. He got chased by crackhead Barbie.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yep.
So now Cuomo, this shouldn't surprise anybody with this scumbag douchebag. Cuomo will stay on the NYC mayor's ballot after conceding Democratic primary to Mamdani. So to explain, he is not committing to running a race, but he's not committing to not running a race either.
Right.
He is keeping his options open. He's sitting on the sidelines, probably hoping that Eric Adams polls as so toxic that he can get the Ackmans to come back in and back him again as their white knight. So, yeah, him staying on that ballot line increases Mamdani's chances tremendously. Look, he is so talented and Eric Adams is so loathsome. I wouldn't say Mamdani wouldn't have a chance in a one-on-one with Adams. I would say you still have to say it favors Adams in an open race through the entire city with Republicans voting too. Because to stop him, most of the Republicans are not going to vote Sliwa. They'll vote Adams, the guy who can win. So, but if you can split the Adams vote with Cuomo, Will he do that? You know, he's going to get a lot of phone calls from some very rich and powerful people telling him not to. So who knows? But that's an interesting development. So to the point of affordability in New York, which again, these people talk like what they're doing is working for people. You cannot argue that the kind of economics that Andrew Cuomo represents, the kinds of economics that Eric Adams represents, have not dominated the city, at least since the Giuliani era, which began in 1992. Where has it gotten us? Manhattan rents hit another record. Manhattan rents climbed to a new record high in May, with the median monthly rent hitting $4,571, up from $4,250 a year earlier. It's the third time in 4 months that median rent in the borough has reached a new high. Meanwhile, in Brooklyn, the median rent rose to $3,650 in May, up from $3,600 in May 2024. Real hourly wage growth in New York City, 2019 to 2014. Top 3% saw wage growth of 34.5%. Upper middle, 9.8%. Middle, 8.5%. Lower middle, 7.5%. Low, 8.2%. So as you see nationwide, and I think this is part of why this race is getting the attention that it is, when you look at the economics, the problems of New York are the problems of neoliberal governance nationwide. It's the problems that everybody is having. Most of the gains go to the top 3%, and then everybody else splits the crumbs. New York has the worst income gap in the nation. So when Tucker's sitting there with Marjorie Taylor Greene, well, I don't agree with his economics. Well, what are your fucking ideas? I think we've tried them. Have we not tried your ideas? Share of households earning less than $25,000 a year. This is, remember, for the state, not the city. 16 point in New York City. There is no way you could live on $25,000 a year. Absolutely no way. No,
impossible.
But statewide, 16.8% make less than $25,000 a year. Share of households earning at least $200,000. 15.9%. Median household income, $82,095. Poverty rate, 14.2%, ninth highest of 50 states. And 40% of people in New York State have a bachelor's degree. So you have some of the richest people in the country. You have some of the highest percentage of rich people in the country and some of the highest percentage of poor people in the country. In many ways, New York is the ultimate outcome of neoliberal governance. You want to see what it looks like? You can see it in these statistics. You wind up with a very South America style economy. Now, this is what Keaton sent me right before we went on, which is interesting. So 18 to 24-year-olds were the largest group in the NYC mayoral primary, followed by 25 to 29-year-olds, followed by 30 to 34-year-olds. This rarely happens, if ever. We always lament that the elections are skewed by the fact that old people vote so disproportionately. But you can see here, it's quite the opposite. You have the highest is in the 18 to 40 range, well, really to 35, and then 35 and the 60-year-olds are about even. So you do have a little bump up in the middle-age demographic, and then it drops off very sharply after 65. So that is definitely part of the story of his victory. We always thought that was part of it, that New York skews unusually young as it is. The average age is 38 because it's so hard to raise a family here. Once people couple up and get pregnant, they tend to move out. So it leaves behind a lot of younger people. So this is how they are trying to take on Mamdani. The Israel first intrusion in every aspect of our government is a glaring betrayal of our Constitution and country. Bill Ackman promises to fund centrist candidate to defeat socialist Mamdani in NYC mayoral race. So he basically wrote one of his novels on X, promising to lavishly fund anyone who would challenge Mamdani that he would find acceptable and who could potentially win. Hey, Ayan Hersey Ali likes the idea. Ackman offers exactly what New York needs: competence, economic understanding, and the courage to lead with principle. So what this tells you is all of the worst people in the country are going to line up behind Bill Ackman or whoever he anoints. Because what you're hearing from Hersey Ali, that's what you're going to be hearing from, Chuck Schumer later on, I promise you. Like, if they settle on somebody, they're all going to coalesce around them. Now, this was somebody here on MSNBC who I think got it exactly right in terms of how counterproductive someone like Bill Ackman flying a flag for the opposition is.
Say to the leaders on Wall Street, if you want to make sure that Zohran Mamdani is elected in November, if that is your goal, you should keep doing what you're doing right now, which is panic, especially in public, because that's almost exactly what the voters want to see right now. They voted for an individual who promised to shake up the establishment, and here we have the establishment appearing to run around with their hair on fire. So if you're Bill Ackman or you're Dan Loeb or any other billionaire, just remember the best thing you can do to support this campaign is to keep throwing these hissy fits on Twitter about how the sky is falling in New York. It's a great way to get people to the polls.
Absolutely right. So this is Representative Laura Gillen. Never heard of her. Have you heard of her, Keaton?
No.
Well, she went on to decry socialism.
I think it's incumbent upon my Democratic colleagues to speak up and to say what our party stands for. We are not socialists.
We are not socialists. Remember Nancy Pelosi when they asked why she was against stopping Congress people from trading in the market and profiting exorbitantly like she does? We're capitalists. It's a free market. We have a right to participate in that. So here is Hakeem Jeffries. This was just this morning being asked about endorsing Mamdani.
I think it's incumbent upon my Democratic colleagues to speak.
Conversation on Wednesday morning where I congratulated him on the campaign that he ran, a campaign that clearly was relentlessly focused on the high cost of living in New York City and the economy. He outworked, he out-communicated, and he out-organized the opposition, and that's clearly why he was successful.
So what's holding you back from endorsing him right now?
Well, we don't really know each other well. Our districts don't overlap. I have never had a substantive conversation with him. And so that's the next step in terms of this process, to be able to sit down, which we agreed to do in central Brooklyn, discuss his vision for moving the city forward and addressing the issues that are important to the communities that I represent, a very diverse district that I represent in Brooklyn, including many African Americans, many Jewish Americans, many Caribbean Americans who are dealing with a lot of challenges in the city and want to make sure that the next mayor of the city of New York, whoever that may be, is prepared to tackle them.
Mom,
you're such a fantastic moron.
And the interviewer goes on basically, I don't know how much money Bill Ackman stuffed in his pocket to frame these questions this way. He could get a job writing for the Colbert Show, though.
You mentioned the diversity of your district, including a lot of Jewish constituents. Mamdani has made comments that some have said veer towards anti-Semitism. His initial
the old Fox News, some people have said.
Some have said.
The old some have said trick.
Statement after October 7th, he criticized the Israeli government but didn't criticize Hamas. He defended the use of the word globalize, or the phrase globalize intifada. And he even said that the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu should be arrested, or he would if he were mayor.
Oh, my.
He would arrest Netanyahu if he visited New York City. Do these things concern you?
I just dropped my monocle in my champagne.
Globalizing the Intifada, by way of example, is not an acceptable phrase, and he's going to have to clarify his position on that as he moves forward. With respect to the Jewish communities that I represent, I think our nominee is
First of all, notice he didn't say it. They're not even saying he said that. He's defending the students' rights to say that. Yeah.
Right. Going to have to convince folks that he is prepared to aggressively address the rise in anti-Semitism in the city of New York, which has been an unacceptable development. And any mayor, whether you're a Democratic mayor, Republican mayor, an independent mayor, has got to commit to the safety and well-being of all of the people of the city of New York. And when there are moments of crisis and a rise in anti-Jewish hate, that's a threshold, of course, needs to be crossed.
Yeah. Unless you are defining a rise in anti-Jewish hate by definition as a rise in awareness of the nature of the Israeli state and opposition to that state as a Jewish state, unless you're defining that as anti-Semitism, which of course they do. No, I am Jewish. I live here. I don't feel threatened. It is the most Jewish city outside of Israel. The idea that Jews are in danger. Now, I can show you, and I'm sure many of our viewers have seen these videos. I can show you a lot of videos of pro-Palestine people being surrounded and harassed by Zionists.
Well, it just came out today. I mean, we knew this. I didn't know. I mean, apparently this was news. Dropsite just did a thing on Betar, organizing the counter-protesting. Now, I didn't know that was news. I mean, it's obvious they organized these counter-protests. So I don't fault them for doing the piece, but it didn't strike me as news. Of course, Betar, they go around with pagers, stuffing them in pockets of protesters. That's not harassment. That's not designed to make people feel unsafe, but they'll never call that out. No.
No. I mean, I just shared a video, and this was in New York, of a bunch of Zionist, a lot of Hasidic, surrounding a woman chanting in Hebrew or Yiddish, I'm not sure which, death to Arabs.
Right, exactly. So that's not That's not a problem.
Why don't you talk about how Muslims are being made to feel unsafe by people like Marjorie Taylor Greene posting pictures of the Statue of Liberty in a burqa because a Muslim won a primary.
Right, exactly.
So this person posted, Mamdani won his district with 68% of the vote. Hakeem Jeffries is declaring war on his own constituents. Well, they always do, don't they? Dan Goldman, he basically gave a non-endorsement. We don't need to read through all that from the poor little rich boy there. So Michael Tracy here says, smart to have made the NYC primary election a referendum on Israel. And this gets into what I was saying before. You want to talk about vulnerabilities. Queer liberation means defund the police. So now you would think that people running against him in a Democratic primary would have brought that up.
Right.
Why didn't they? Because they're after voters who would like that, especially in New York. So the things that really are his vulnerabilities, they can't touch it.
Yeah.
They can't touch it.
In this case, sorry, go ahead.
To be clear, he's saying, he's saying he doesn't want to defund the police. He wants to hire mental health workers, which is a policy I agree with. But, I mean, he put that out there. Did you see one bring it up in either one of the debates? I watched both the debates. They didn't. They made it all. They thought Israel was such a slam dunk in New York City. They said, why lose some of the voters who are passionate about those issues, who are going to like that statement? Why focus on that? Israel gets you right over the finish line. Didn't work out that way.
No, exactly. Yeah, what I was going to say, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, is he said, in this case, because you're in such a liberal town that really embraces all of the woke stuff, the woke stuff is going to play to his advantage because he's going to force the opposition to criticize him on issues that he's strong on. Like, he's going to force them to criticize him about Israel, about cheap groceries, about cheap rent. Like, he's funneling all of the criticism into his strengths, basically.
Right. And to that point, so this is something that you could erode. I think a lot of these establishment Democrats don't even understand this. They don't understand the conversation around civil liberties being had on the left like they're just not even in on that conversation. Socialist Democrat Zohran Mamdani pledges to root out bigotry across NYC with an 800% increase in funding for hate crime prevention programs. Now, this is probably on the left, the most common thing I see them attacking him for. I think establishment Democrats don't even realize there's a fault line there to be exploited, honestly. I don't think they're avoiding it. I don't even think they're aware of it. Nick, increasing funding for hate crimes is a giant red flag and often the liberal way to sell funding a giant police state. He's right. He's right.
Of course.
He's and when he talks about this, he's giving into the framing that we have a crisis of anti-Semitism.
Right.
Now, when you combine this with, as we will see, some of his very extreme, what I would consider extreme views on LGBTQ rights and funding, what do you think he's going to do with an 800% increase in hate crime funding? Michael Tracy. When pressed on the anti-Semitism issue, Mamdani has been touting his proposal for an 800% increase in, quote, funding for hate crime prevention programs. So basically, he wants more pointless bureaucracy to nitpick over the definition of a hate crime and make busy work for themselves. Yes, kind of making an elite overproduction argument. I think that's exactly right. So I got to jump ahead a little bit in this video. I forgot to do that. Sorry, give me a second. You want to take a super chat real quick? We'll just cut this.
Let's see. Virtuoso Lindsey Graham wishes it was called Midnight Cruise. Oh, I got that one already. Sorry. Where did we go here? Kuznetsky Bassane, how do we end up with such stupefying, obsequious members of Congress by design? Thank you, Kuznetsky Bassane. Steve Bertram, that's a new low for you, Russ. I'm a bot that's been watching and donating for a year. That'll be the last super chat I ever buy from you. We didn't call you a bot. We said there were bots on the show.
No. I wasn't referring to anyone.
No, we weren't referring to you. We weren't
no,
referring to you.
I was just talking in general.
Yeah.
About,
the bots on because we had a
because I was looking at it while he was doing the super chats, and it's like it's been for 2 days.
Oh yeah,
we've been getting the same exact comments on this clip because it went viral enough for the Mossad to notice it.
Yeah, we had a clip on YouTube Shorts that got over 1 million views. That's what he was talking about. He wasn't calling you.
No, it wasn't a reference to you. All right, I got it more or less. All right. So here's what he said about Bill Ackman.
I will meet with them and I'll explain why I believe in the necessity of raising the top corporate tax rate. And I'll also tell Bill Ackman that I firmly disagree with his attempt to dismantle diversity, equity, and inclusion across the country, because it's not only against the morals of so many, it's also against the actual bottom line for so many businesses. And as a businessman, he should understand that.
All right. Well, Assemblyman, thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Okay, so particularly if you want to stir up, because this is clearly going to be a generational kind of an election, as it often is in Democrat on Democrat violence. Yeah, man. To be fair, I saw another interview he did today with Meet the Press where he said billionaires shouldn't exist. But she asked him about Bill Ackman. He didn't focus on that. He focused on DEI, which, needless to say, is very divisive. Now, you do have, it splits. The polling is kind of all over the place with this. But it seems like it kind of splits 50-50. And opinions on DEI programs. Certainly in terms of his base, it's probably, 90-10 or something. Favor it. But if you really want to stir up the older people to vote, you might want to talk about this, but they can't. They can't. Not as Democrats. They cannot go after DEI as Democrats. He is proposing $65 million for gender-affirming care, including for youth. Now, again, that is something, certainly if you were running in another city, another state, certainly if you're running nationally, that is something that, especially now, to continue to have that position, even as the overwhelming evidence that there is no science to support the proposition that these treatments are worth the risks, have become so clear that even The Atlantic caught on to it and just dropped an article talking about how, yes, like this is a misinformation bubble. We've covered this. One country after another, not coincidentally, I think, with a not-for-profit healthcare system, has done a meta-analysis of the data for this and found it completely lacking. There is no evidence to support, certainly given the consequences of getting it wrong, that this is a course of treatment that should be prescribed for children who certainly cannot consent to it. But he has this policy. Now, I suspect this is what I have found with most people who believe this. They just knee-jerk kind of walk right into it as the default left position without really knowing anything about the subject at all. Also, there's a sizable number of people who would be inclined to vote for Mamdani who like policies like this and who specifically would probably get angry if he did not have these policies. Point being, you want to go after Mamdani, the cheap grocery stores are probably not the line of attack to go with. Or this, hey, 2017 NYC ordered a review of public works constituting symbols of hate for potential removal. But a statue of Columbus remains in Astoria in defiance of the values of humanity, empathy, and justice that we stand for.
Andrew Cuomo is not going to like that one.
He's not going to like that one. It has to go sign the petition. Now, I'm not necessarily against that. You know, one thing I will point out that really shows you how psyoped we are, because I consider a lot of the identity politics an intentional distraction from class and economics. Okay, man, we want to start like dismantling systems of oppression and you're a socialist. Why don't you lobby to take Carnegie, who literally sent troops to murder union strikers? Why don't you lobby to take Carnegie's name off things? Why isn't that considered a criminal, a historic criminal whose name shouldn't be on anything? Henry Ford, the Nazi. Why aren't people lobbying to get Ford to change their name, right? Traitors to workers who happen to be successful, uber successful capitalists, these are not to be questioned. They cannot have you questioning why Carnegie's name is on things given that he murdered workers. Once you start questioning that, you got to start questioning why Jeff Bezos is allowed to exist, why people like that are allowed to enjoy the fruits of wealth and social prestige. Yeah, just basically rented Venice over the weekend. Right. That is why they direct you to Columbus. That is why they direct you to wanting to remove statues of Ulysses S. Grant, because they don't want you talking about, well, why do we honor Carnegie, a guy who literally sent troops in to murder workers who were striking for better wages? Why is Frick's name on the Frick Museum? That was who Carnegie sent to go kill them, and he did. So why don't we demand that they change the name of the Frick Museum? It's a good example of how you have been psyoped into not thinking in those terms, into thinking only about this. So look, Mamdani, I appreciate that he talks about economics and class. He's savvy and sophisticated enough to know that he should lead with that and not these things. You wouldn't know about these things unless you looked into them. Because you watch him in interviews, he never brings it up. But what's interesting is nobody else brings it up because he's running as a Democrat.
Right.
A Republican would bring it up. Maybe Sliwa will wind up bringing things like this up. That's
a non-starter
possible.
in New York.
But the Democrat on Democrat, I'll be very surprised if this comes up.
Yeah, and it's a non-starter in New York City. And if Cuomo runs, that splits the centrist Democrat vote. It's interesting because a lot of Republicans were calling for Sliwa to drop out to make this a head-to-head between Adams and Mamdani, assuming Cuomo didn't run. The problem with that is at that point, Adams would be forced to brand himself MAGA because he is literally being coerced by Donald Trump to assist in ICE deportations. So the fact that you have Hakeem Jeffries withholding his endorsement, Dan Goldman withholding his endorsement, Gillibrand, Schumer, none of them have endorsed. They are essentially going to try and rat fuck this race to throw it to the criminal incumbent mayor who's being coerced by the president to assist in ICE raids and mass deportations. That's how much they care about their voters. That's how much they care about the voters. And as for the other stuff, it's not going to stick in New York, which is why the fact that Cuomo may stay in is potentially a big boon for
even
him.
Cuomo didn't bring that shit up.
Yeah, exactly. Dimitri Mugianis says they have film of Lindsey Graham kissing a woman. Good one. Dorian Marquise, thanks for the $9.99. Polls are inaccurate. 2016 and 2024 prove this. Also, 60 million pre-1980 babies and older millennials voted for John McCain in 2008. They are not the extra 16 mil who joined and divorced MAGA. Kuznetsky Bassane, Zohran Mamdani for first Muslim U.S. president. Well, he's born in Uganda, so he cannot actually run for president.
Nope.
Yeah. Andy Gardner, relax, dudes. Don't be panicking. Trust in the plan. Thank you, Andy. Appreciate that. P. Walker, thanks for the $10. Democrats smile even as they stab Mamdani in the back because Mamdani makes clear how fake Democrats are. But the bigger problem, AOC performed the same stick, once bitten, twice shy. Kuznetsky Bassane says Mamdani for first Sharia U.S. president. Thank you, Kuznetsky Bassane. Appreciate that very, very much. All right, let's go to some Rumble rants here. Nocturnal Human says Trump sounds like people who think aliens built the pyramids when talking about Iran moving their stuff. No human can do it. It's heavy. Thank you. Killer Hitton says enriched uranium is too heavy to move. They need like 3 of their friends, strong friends, to help. Then they need to rent a U-Haul and pizza and beer for their strong friends after the move. Thank you. Lindsey Graham needed Operation Midnight Hammer to come. Thank you, Eric Housseau. Appreciate that. All right, we're going to move right on along here, folks. All right, this is kind of a fun one. It's a little bit of an eggheady one, but it's short, so don't worry too much. So in 2011, Peter Thiel wrote this piece for the National Review, which apparently was somewhat influential in right-wing circles, called "The End of the Future." And what he essentially argues in this piece is that the current moment has disappointed people whose vision of the future was one of great and fast-paced technological progress, basically arguing that we had hit kind of a snag as a civilization because we don't have the flying cars that were promised to us in movies like Back to the Future 2, which, yes, he actually did mention by name. Shows you the level of sophistication that we're ultimately dealing with here. Modern Western civilization, I'm going to read a little bit so you get the gist of this. Modern Western civilization stands on the twin plinths of science and technology. Taken together, these two interrelated domains reassure us that the 19th century story of never-ending progress remains intact. Without them, the arguments that we are undergoing cultural decay, ranging from the collapse of art and literature after 1945 to the soft totalitarianism of political correctness in media and academia to the sordid worlds of reality television and popular entertainment, would gather far more force. Liberals often assert that science and technology remain essentially healthy. Conservatives sometimes counter that these are false utopias. But the two sides of culture wars silently agree that the accelerating development and application of the natural sciences continues apace. Indeed, the unique history of the West proves the exception to the rule that most humans through the millennia have existed in a naturally brutal, unchanging, and impoverished state. But there is no law that the exceptional rise of the West must continue. So we could do worse than to inquire into the widely held opinion that America is on the wrong track and has been for some time, to wonder whether progress is not doing as well as advertised, and perhaps to take exceptional measures to arrest and reverse any decline. If meaningful scientific and technological progress occurs, then we reasonably would expect greater economic prosperity, though this may be offset by other factors. Well, that is the rub, is it not? Those other factors. So meaningful scientific and technological progress has occurred in the AI realm, but it has not resulted in greater economic prosperity. It's resulted in greater economic prosperity for the Ubermensch, like Peter Thiel, who have the unique skill set of being able to manipulate this technology. But if anything, it has created a crisis of labor, a crisis of prosperity for the masses. And so I think he may have seen that coming enough to put that parenthetical there, though this may be offset by other factors. And also in reverse, if economic gains as measured by certain key indicators have been limited or non-existent, then perhaps so has scientific and technological progress. Therefore, to the extent that economic growth is easier to quantify than scientific or technological progress, economic numbers will contain indirect but important clues to our larger investigation. So I just wanted to read a little bit of that as precursor to this interview that he gave to Ross Douthat of the New York Times. That awkward moment when Peter Thiel realized he might be the very Antichrist he warned about. So we're going to play a few minutes before the piece that's in this tweet just to give you even more backstory to see where this genius is coming from.
Giving talks recently of the Antichrist, which is, you have been giving talks recently about the concept of the Antichrist, which is a Christian concept, an apocalyptic concept. What does that mean to you? What is the Antichrist?
How much time do we have?
We've got as much time as you have to talk about the Antichrist.
All right. Well, I could talk about it for a long time. I think there's always a question. How do we articulate, some of these existential risks, some of the challenges we have, and they're all framed in this sort of runaway dystopian science text. There's a risk of nuclear war. There's a risk of environmental disaster, maybe something specific like climate change, although there are lots of other ones we could come up with. There's a risk of, bioweapons. You have all the different sci-fi scenarios. Obviously, there are certain types of risks with AI. But I always think that if we're going to have this frame of talking about existential risks, perhaps we should also talk about the risk of another type of a bad singularity, which I would describe as the one world totalitarian state. Because I would say the political solution, the default political solution people have for all these existential risks is one world governance. And so the atheist philosophical framing is one world or none. That was a short film that was put out by the Federation of American Scientists in the late 40s. Starts with a nuclear bomb blowing up the world, and obviously you need a one world government to stop it, one world or none. And the Christian framing, which in some ways is the same question, is Antichrist or Armageddon. You have the one world state of the Antichrist, or we're sleepwalking towards Armageddon. One world or none, Antichrist or Armageddon, on one level are the same question. Now, I have a lot of thoughts on this topic, but
I have a lot of thoughts on this topic, and because I'm very rich, no one feels incentivized to tell me that I'm a crazy midwit crank whose opinions are really worth nothing. I mean, this is just, it's mostly babble. It's mostly just banal bullshit. But to the extent that he has a point, it's as literally like Dr. Frankenstein making the point that the people holding me back are simpletons who want to, really rein in the potential of humanity. And it's weird that he defines the Antichrist as the forces of humility, I would argue, that seek to rein in the impulses of madmen like him. That's essentially what he's saying. Now, he's putting it in very highfalutin pseudo-intellectual terminology. I watched this entire interview just to see if there was something here. These tech people are all the same. These are very mediocre people who have a very unique skill set that happens to be the most in-demand skill set of this era where we're transitioning from the information economy to the artificial intelligence economy. So because they are the ones who can kind of lead us into that future, they are put on a pedestal despite being completely unremarkable people. Like, is this, I don't know, am I missing something? Or is this basically a bunch of bullshit. I was editing this video today. My wife Amanda sits down. She overhears it. She says, "What crack are you editing now?" She says, "What is this?" she says, "What crack are you editing?" It's funny because I called him a crank and she called it crack, and that's exactly the way I felt. Anything before we go on, or do you want to hear more? Is the jury still out?
Go on.
All right.
But sort of one question is, and this was a plot hole in all these Antichrist books people wrote. How does the Antichrist take over the world? It's he gives these demonic, hypnotic speeches, and people just fall for it. And so it's this plot hole. It's this daemonium.
Right. It's implausible.
It's a very implausible plot hole.
Right.
But I think we have an answer to this plot hole. The way the Antichrist would take over the world is you talk about Armageddon nonstop. You talk about existential risk nonstop. And this is what you need to regulate. It's the opposite of the picture of Baconian science from the 17th, 18th century, where, you know, the Antichrist is like some evil tech genius, evil scientist who invents this machine to take over.
It's an inverse of most people think of the Antichrist as like guys like me, but I'm telling you, actually, it's those people who are the Antichrist. Like, for example, Greta Thunberg.
The world, people are way too scared for that. In our world, the thing that has political resonance is the opposite. It is the thing that has political resonance is we need to stop science. We need to just say stop to this. And this is where, I don't know, in the 17th century, I can imagine a Dr. Strangelove, Edward Teller type person taking over the world. In our world, it's far more likely to be Greta Thunberg.
Yeah.
He actually
said
is
that,
on
yes,
the verge of establishing a totalitarian
Greta
dystopia.
Thunberg is at the doorstep of consolidating a one world government, says the man whose business partner essentially took over the government already, Elon Musk, former business partner, and whose protege is the vice president.
Yeah.
You're gonna it's Greta Thunberg who's taking over the world. That's the more viable political orientation. Greta Thunberg out getting shot at on a boat by the IDF in the Mediterranean Sea. Yeah, no, she's going to usher in a dystopian one world government. She's the Antichrist, not me.
Yeah, well, this is the kind of shit that they used to get conservative, anti-establishment populists to put on the knee pads for a bunch of tech overlords that wouldn't piss on people like them if they were on fire.
Right.
Like this is how you got this spectacle of these working class red state MAGA guys worshiping Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. This is the narrative. I mean, we've seen it being constructed for years. It's kind of the mainstreaming of some of the Q stuff. You know, they've sanded off some of the rough edges of Q. And yeah, because the cultural signaling of a certain type of New World Order project is very repugnant to that group. They figured out how to signal to them culturally while constructing something that is much more plausibly a one world system from which there is no escape. Like the Thunbergs, these people, they never really had the means to do something like that, whatever desire they might have. These are the Silicon Valley tech overlords with all the money and all the servers. These are the guys who could really build a panopticon out of the World Wide Web that you're going to never be able to escape if you want to function in society.
Exactly. Like Thunberg at worst, and like we said, from this day forth in this house, Greta Thunberg is a hero. We put respect on her name. But at worst, she has functioned in the past as, if you make all the worst assumptions about her, kind of a useful idiot for a certain clique of very powerful people who want to use climate change as a way to virtue signal and manufacture consent behind their own vision of a world order. But these fucking people, you're talking about Palantir, man. You're talking about, I mean, this is real Skynet shit. This is beyond the Thunberg and the WEF. This is worse. This is more severe than that. And so now Doubthat sees an opening. He sees an opportunity to go viral, and he takes it. He pushes him back. Well, what if you're the Antichrist? that you are talking about staving off.
My very specific question for you, right, is that you're an investor in AI. You're deeply invested in Palantir, in military technology, in technologies of surveillance, in technologies of warfare, and so on, right? And it just seems to me that when you tell me a story about the Antichrist coming to power and using the fear of technological change to sort of impose order on the world, I feel like that Antichrist would maybe be using the tools that you were building, right? Like, wouldn't the Antichrist be like, great, we're not going to have any more technological progress, but I really like what Palantir has done.
Look at that smile on his face. Look at him. He's like, yeah, I'm going viral this week, bitches. It's my day in the sun. My day has arrived. All the kids in high school who bullied me, called me a nerd and a dweeb and stuffed me in the lockers. Oh, it's my time to shine. He knew he landed one there. You could tell. Look at that. Look at that smile. Look at that big smile.
Christ be like, great. We're not going to have any more technological progress, but I really like what Palantir has done so far, right?
Yeah,
I mean, isn't that a concern? Wouldn't that be the irony of history would be that the man publicly worrying about the Antichrist accidentally hastens his or her arrival?
There are all these different
malfunction. Here comes
I mean, honestly, that was very that was like very Spinal Tap.
Yeah.
Well, but couldn't you be the Antichrist?
Couldn't you be the Antichrist? Like he's looking at the amps.
No. I don't think you understand. Greta Thunberg is the Antichrist.
Yes, Greta. No, I say Greta Thunberg's the Antichrist. But what if you are? No, it's her. It's her.
No, it's her.
It's her.
Clearly.
There are all these different scenarios. I obviously don't think that that's what I'm doing.
I mean, to be clear, I don't think that's what you're doing either. I'm just interested in how you get to a world willing to submit to permanent authoritarian rule.
Well, but again, there are these different gradations of this we can describe, but is this
Rich
so preposterous what I just told you as a broad account of the stagnation that the entire world has submitted for 50 years to peace and safetyism? This is 1 Thessalonians 5:3, the slogan of the Antichrist.
So this is why I read you some excerpts of that article, because he reverts back to this. Okay, well, wouldn't you agree that there's been a stagnation, meaning that humanity has underperformed? And by underperformed, I meant, we don't have flying cars. We haven't colonized Mars, right? These people just have very grandiose delusions of what humanity is capable of. And they project their own insecurities onto humanity, right? I should have been able to accomplish even more, and it's this oppressive society holding me back. Says the guy who just got $1 billion to build a database on every American and to help the most powerful country and military in the world kill people in Gaza. And this guy is acting like, surely you would agree there are oppressive one world government forces that are holding me back. Right? Like, surely we can both agree on that.
The stagnation.
I just want to get this piece about stagnation, because that's essentially what he's saying.
Is this so preposterous, what I've just told you, as a broad account of the stagnation that the entire world has submitted for 50 years to peace and safetyism? This is 1 Thessalonians 5:3. The slogan of the Antichrist is peace and safety, and we've submitted.
All right, that's where.
Okay, all right. Now I wanted to see the whole thing before I really comment on it. Okay, so first of all, to suggest that we have somehow technologically stagnated over the last 50 years is insane. It's insane. Yeah. 50 years ago, we lived in a world where, you had to get up from the couch to change the channel. And, people thought that green wallpaper was a great idea. And, cell phones, you go and you watch science fiction, like the best that they could conceive of in terms of video calls was that you would do them from a computer.
Right.
or that you would have like, pay terminals where you would have video calls. Like the idea that you would, even science fiction usually did not conceive of it that way. So in some respects, you could say we exceeded the vision of science fiction writers of what technology we would have at this point. The idea that our technology has stagnated in exchange for peace and security. I mean, you know what that sounds like? That sounds like something the Antichrist would say to justify war, chaos, disorder, and suffering.
Yes.
Well, you got to break some eggs if you want to make a Darwinian omelet.
Yeah.
Right? Like what are you saying? Well, from that pressure will come a diamond. We have to obliterate the human race in order to.
We have to create a teleport machine.
Yeah. Now, all of this, I mean, just boilerplate and Rand stuff. You have to, give completely unrestrained possibilities to the brilliant entrepreneur creator, and from the sweat of his brow will come all of the fruits of civilization, right? He's just making this kind of Ayn Rand thing. And then these guys are all obsessed with the role of Western rationalism and the Age of Enlightenment, seeing themselves as the inheritors of that tradition. So yeah, man, I mean, this is pretty typical of the thinking of that whole set. They are the Randian Ubermensch who should be allowed to build their businesses to the benefit of everybody. Now, what he's not saying, and he doesn't say that in the article, and he elides it, you pointed out that parenthetical, which is where he kind of obliquely indicates this. Hey, man, for most of human history, progress has only benefited people at the top.
Right.
The idea that economic progress is by definition, in those Ayn Rand terms, it's going to benefit everybody. That's not true. That's not true. You guys are bringing us back to feudalism. Ancient Rome, 80% of the people were poor, illiterate peasants. That's pretty much how it was until the modern era. You guys are bringing us back to that with a much more advanced technology. And just like back then, if you look at the big, beautiful bill, you pass something like that, we continue on this track, you're going to get back to medievalism, where you have a group of people that are living in this highly technologically advanced world, which the aristocrats would have been for that time, living in a completely different world, architecturally, creatively, in terms of literature, art, food, right? And then everyone else is going to be a poor, ignorant peasant. That's the world you're building.
Right, exactly. And to his point about, Western civilization, has proven an exception to the rule. Well, maybe not in such a great way. You ever think about that? Maybe not in such a great way. Like, how many Chinese Peter Thiels have sprung about in the last 30 years? How many Chinese Elon Musks have sprung about in the last 30 years? Do they produce megalomaniacs like this who usher in feudalism? No, maybe socialism is the alternative to feudalism, because this utopia that you think you're ushering in is not doable. Maybe but of course, he can't think that way, because these are libertarian ideologues. And that matched with this kind of apocalyptic technology leads you to where you are now, where they got this populist president, and, they go into Ross talks about in the interview, well, isn't the irony here that you kind of really harness the energy of these populists, who are really more part of a revivalist movement than a revolutionary one?
Right.
You kind of use them to get, where you are. How do you reconcile that? Well, look, the answer is what you were talking about earlier. They made the Greta Thunberg thing, that whole WEF thing, so unpalatable that, as Whitney Webb said, they got people to just volunteer for this. They just got them to volunteer for it. They volunteer for it, and then Trump will privatize it, and that's it. They worship these people. Exactly.
Yep.
Simple as that. Simple as that. All right.
Yeah, well, when you look at these freaks, when you look at Elon, when you look at Thiel, when you listen to these people talk, when you listen to Zuckerberg, at that point, you have to concede. Look, yeah, I have reservations about concentrating too much power in the state. I do. I get it. You can't say that these people don't represent an existential threat to the well-being of humanity. I mean, we've run the capitalist experiment, right? It got us here.
Sure.
It got us to a world where freaks like this are rummaging through your data and creating the new world order that you were afraid of. Now, say what you want about the communists. They grabbed these guys and they put them in the fields for 20 years.
Right. Exactly.
So, I mean, come on, man. You can't get behind that.
Yeah. Re-education, baby. Just a couple of funny notes here. Toby Rogers says, Peter Thiel is worth over $20 billion and has access to the best chefs and personal trainers in the world, and he looks like an American prisoner of war behind enemy lines in Cambodia. Yes, he does. And this I thought was even better. This puts a finger on it, because I'm like, what is it that looks weird about him? And this is it. Peter Thiel looks like a guy in a zombie movie who's hiding the fact that he got bitten from everyone else. Yeah, he looks like there's an illness struggling to take him over that he's like barely suppressing. Yeah, he just looks like a very he looks like the Antichrist. He really does. He really looks like the Antichrist.
Like his Antichrist stuff is struggling to manifest.
Exactly. Yes. Free Shit says the president, The View, CNN, Judge Judy, members of Congress, America's Got Talent, Bernie Sanders, jackass. Who can I trust? I feel your pain, Free Shit. How funny would it be, says username, if people started parroting corporate talking points but deliberately inverting Israel and Iran? Yeah, good point. Trump, grab him by the diaper. Thank you. Appreciate that. Let's see. Bottom line, says Kemen, you don't have to celebrate Mamdani's victory, but you should all support the defeat of his chode opponents and the establishment, of course. Eric Rousseau
says, good way
to
to put it.
Yep. To be fair, they probably want to go to Israel because they saw those IDF hotties dance TikToks. There you go. I ran for office. OMG. MTG's a sleeper cell. Thank you for that. I Am the Owl says, Russell, I married Emma Vigeland. Her laughing at a volleyball player getting brain damage hooked me. I'll still enjoy listening to DD, though, while getting the house ready for her boyfriends to come over. Thank you, I Am the Owl. Appreciate that. My Real Name says, when are you going to have Norm on again? We should have Norm on again. Absolutely. That would be great. That would be great. You know, he canvassed for Mamdani. He actually volunteered for
Did
Mamdani.
he?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So it'd be interesting to have him talk about that. There was a Back to the Future 2. I would respect him if he referenced Blade Runner or Brazil. Yeah, no, he actually talks about Back to the Future 2. Yeah, in that interview. Shows you where his head is at. Yeah.
Back to the Future 2.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Yeah. Well, I've heard people talk about this because Back to the Future 2 is where he goes to 2015 and they have flying cars. So he's like, and the fact that we're in 2025 without flying cars means that we didn't live up to our vision of the future. It was a comedy movie sequel.
I mean, that is really regarded.
Yeah, that is very very deep thinking there. Yeah, exactly. Like it's a movie. It's a popcorn fiction movie.
No, that's really one of the stupidest things I ever heard.
Exactly, yeah. The fact that we didn't live up to Back to the Future 2 means we're lagging, means we should probably build Palantir. That's it. See, if we had only built the flying cars, we should have just built the flying cars, because that would have put these morons, all these on the spectrum lunatics who now are coming up with schemes to conquer the world. They'd have been happy if we just gave them the flying cars. They wouldn't have done this. They'd have been like, I guess we're here.
And the rocket skateboard, the anti-gravity
yeah,
skateboard.
The hoverboard. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the hoverboard, yeah.
All right, let's move on.
Okay, so you might have heard that SCOTUS busted some moves this week. So first we will get into some of the lesser ones, although they're pretty significant, before we get to the main event. The Supreme Court upheld a Texas law requiring pornographic websites to verify their users are at least 18. The case pitted concerns about protecting minors against worries about violating the First Amendment rights of adults.
Great job.
Justice Clarence Thomas wrote for the 6-3 majority that the law survived because it only incidentally burdens the protected speech of adults.
We're so back.
So the issue here was, hey, isn't that going to make a lot of adults not use pornographic websites if they have to give their ID and they don't want to risk a hack, which certainly happens from time to time on these sites, and get embarrassed by having given their ID. Supreme Court decided the compelling public interest in minors not being exposed to Bonnie Blue outweighs that consideration. I gotta say I tend to agree with that. The Supreme Court sided with a group of parents who want to withdraw their elementary school children from class when storybooks with LGBTQ plus characters are being read. In a 6-3 decision that divided along ideological lines, the court said a Maryland public school district's refusal to allow opt-outs likely burdens parents' First Amendment right to freely exercise their religion. They said the school must allow opt-outs while the legal challenge continues. Justice Sonia Sotomayor disagreed with the ruling, saying children of all faiths and backgrounds deserve an education and an opportunity to practice living in our multicultural society. Quote, that experience is critical to our nation's civic vitality, Sotomayor said, yet it will become a mere memory if children must be insulated from exposure to ideas and concepts that may conflict with their parents' religious beliefs. This is interesting to me because going all the way back to when they made sex education in schools mandatory, they allowed religious parents to opt out. So I would think that precedent would have already set the ground for opting out on religious grounds, but apparently that had to be restated.
Yeah, evolution, like, can you opt out of being taught the theory of evolution? I don't know.
I don't know about that. I mean, that's an interesting point because people could have religious objections to that as well.
Yeah, they can have religious objections to anything. So, yeah, doesn't seem like you should be able to
with
just...
sex ed, they did give that exemption. So I would think that would apply here, but you make a good point.
Maybe
about
not. I mean,
evolution.
I don't know. I don't know if you should be able to opt out, but I mean, it doesn't matter. School is bullshit anyway. Who cares?
Yeah, you're going to raise the kids in the backyard, right?
Yeah, right, exactly.
You're gonna set up a little
Doesn't matter.
chalkboard
None of what
in the
they teach you
backyard.
at school matters anyway. So that's
Are you
that's
sending the
irrelevant.
kids to public school?
It's
Are you gonna send them
irrelevant
to
ruling.
public school?
Yeah. We do public school. Yeah.
All right.
It's irrelevant.
The justices rule. The justices ruled.
Nothing they teach you at school matters. It doesn't matter. Non-issue.
Why do I see your grown-up twins showing a clip of this segment to their therapist?
It's a
in 20
non-issue.
years?
It's a non-issue.
This is my dad saying school's a non-issue. What the fuck does that even mean?
What does that even mean?
The justices ruled against a challenge to an Obamacare provision that forces health insurers to cover certain medicines and services like HIV preventive medication and cholesterol-lowering drugs. The decision upheld a key part of Obamacare that helps guarantee that health insurers cover preventive care, such as cancer screenings at no cost to patients. Individuals and small businesses had challenged the structure of the task force that makes recommendations about preventive services that insurers would be required to cover at no additional cost to patients. Okay, so here's the main event. Limiting the power of federal judges to put a stay on executive orders.
From the U.S. Supreme Court, strengthening President Trump's authority in a decision involving birthright citizenship. The 6-3 decision along ideological lines, ruling that federal judges cannot put nationwide blocks on a president's executive orders. Justice Amy Coney Barrett writing for the majority that federal courts do not exercise general oversight of the executive branch. Justice Sonia Sotomayor writing for the justices in dissent that the president's bid to end birthright citizenship makes a solemn mockery of our Constitution. President Trump calling it a big win, making a rare appearance in the White House briefing room today, saying he'll now move forward with his plans to limit birthright citizenship. The Supreme Court ruling may also allow the president to charge ahead on other parts of his agenda. ABC's senior Washington reporter Devin Dwyer leads us off at the Supreme Court.
Tonight, the Supreme Court's conservative majority dramatically limiting the ability of federal judges to check presidential power. The 6-3 decision allows President Trump to move forward with plans to end birthright citizenship, which has been law of the land for more than 100 years.
This morning, the Supreme Court has delivered a monumental victory for the Constitution, the separation of powers, and the rule of law.
Federal judges in 3 states had ruled Trump's order on birthright citizenship blatantly violates the Constitution and Supreme Court precedent, issuing nationwide injunctions blocking the order from taking effect. But today, Justice Amy Coney Barrett, writing for the majority, said those sweeping injunctions went too far and that federal courts do not exercise general oversight of the executive branch. They resolve cases and controversies.
I want to thank Justice Barrett, who wrote the opinion brilliantly, as well as Chief Justice Roberts.
I'm going to
and
stop
Justices
calling her
Alito, Gorsuch,
hire.
Kavanaugh, and Thomas. Great people.
In a biting dissent, Justice Sonia Sotomayor said the liberal justices would not join so grave an attack on our system of law, saying Trump's bid to end birthright citizenship makes a solemn mockery of our Constitution. The court's decision took no position on whether Trump's executive order is constitutional, though the ruling does let him put it into effect in 30 days. But at the White House today, no explanation of how that would work. Attorney General Pam Bondi deflecting when pressed on how exactly citizenship for newborns across America would be determined.
Who would be tasked with actually vetting citizenship? And how, would this be a situation where you have nurses and doctors checking for citizenship of parents, or?
This is all pending litigation. It's going to be decided in October by the Supreme Court, and we'll discuss that after the litigation.
But there is currently no litigation before the Supreme Court in October involving birthright citizenship. Still, opponents of Trump's order are vowing to get the issue back before the justices as soon as possible.
With the impact of today's decision could be far-reaching. Dozens of federal judges have issued nationwide injunctions against some of President Trump's controversial policies, from layoffs of federal workers to federal funding freezes of foreign aid. Some of those injunctions may now need to be rolled back or lifted entirely. Whit?
Okay, so the loophole here is that a judge can still issue a stay in the case of a class action lawsuit. So the group suing to stop the birthright citizenship executive order has now shifted to make their case a class action lawsuit in order to try to get a stay of the instituting of the policy. So this was Trump speaking about this.
This decision, and thanks to this decision, we can now promptly file to proceed with numerous policies that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis. And some of the cases we're talking about would be ending birthright citizenship, which now comes to the fore. That was meant for the babies of slaves. It wasn't meant for people trying to scam the system and come into the country on a vacation. This was, in fact, it was the same date, the exact same date, the end of the Civil War. It was meant for the babies of slaves, and it's so clean and so obvious. But this lets us go there and finally win that case, because hundreds of thousands of people are pouring into our country under birthright citizenship, and it wasn't meant for that reason. It was meant for the babies of slaves. So thanks to this decision, we can now promptly file to proceed with these numerous policies and those that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis. And
we wouldn't have had this problem at all if we had never ended slavery.
And that is why my next executive order
is to reinstate slavery,
including birthright citizenship, ending sanctuary city funding, suspending refugee resettlement, freezing unnecessary funding, stopping federal taxpayers from paying for transgender surgeries, and numerous other priorities of the American people. We have so many of them. I have a whole list. I'm not going to bore you, and I'm going to have Pam get up and say a few words, but there's really, she can talk as long as she wants, because this is a very important decision. This is a
complicated thing. I don't know anything about it.
Tremendous amount of territory. But I want to just thank again the Supreme Court for this ruling. It's a giant. It's a giant. And they should be very proud, and our country should be very proud of the Supreme Court today.
Yeah. So to be clear, what he's talking about is birthright citizenship's part of the 14th Amendment. And like a lot of elements of the 14th Amendment, yes, it was addressing slavery, but subsequent court rulings have held that it applies to everyone, obviously.
Right.
So they're trying to challenge that interpretation, even though it's long been established in the law. Now, the Supreme Court did not rule on that particular thing. They're saying October, but the segment said there's no case before the court pending in October that would decide that. But the more relevant thing is the ruling that federal judges have such limited power to stop executive orders. That is insane, because by the time these things work through the court, you're going to have what if he did decide he's going to institute slavery tomorrow?
Right.
You would have to do a by executive order. In theory, you would have to introduce a class action lawsuit.
Right.
Like a federal judge couldn't just say, "What are you, crazy?"
Right. Exactly. You have to make its way up through the courts.
Executives
Right. Exactly.
at that time. You know how long it takes for these cases to work their way up to the Supreme Court.
Right.
All of these executive orders, and they're already going with a flood the zone tactic, where they're just issuing executive orders faster than the courts can handle them. Now, I mean, he just went down a laundry list of what he wants to do now. So here's Bondi. Now, two of the qualifications to work for Trump as a woman, it helps if you're a blonde. It helps if you have a big cross between your boobs. But really, if you want to look at the style, you have to be really good at projecting grievance. All of his blondes are very good at white woman tears. Like that's what they do. That's really what they specialize in. Offense. They're like podcasters. Really hires people who have the tone of grifting podcasters.
Right.
We're fighting for all Americans. Americans are finally getting what they voted for. No longer will we have rogue judges striking down President Trump's policies across the entire nation. No longer.
Offended.
Today, in the 6-3 opinion, Justice Barrett correctly holds that the district court lacks authority to enter nationwide or universal injunctions. These lawless injunctions gave relief to everyone in the world instead of the parties before the court. As the Supreme Court held today, they turned district courts into the imperial judiciary. Active liberal judges have used these injunctions to block virtually all of President Trump's policies. To put this in perspective, there are 94 federal judicial districts. 5 of those districts throughout this country held 35 of the nationwide injunctions. Think about that. 94 districts. And 35 out of the 40 opinions with nationwide injunctions came from 5 liberal districts in this country. No longer. No longer. These injunctions have blocked our policies from tariffs to military readiness to immigration to foreign affairs, fraud, abuse, and many other.
Now, we're kind of a two-man band with some contributions from Jake, so I did not have time to really dig into this. But I know for a fact, because Glenn tweeted about it as it was going on, some of these injunctions have come from conservative judges that were appointed by Republicans. There is no way that what she's saying, that all of the injunctions came from liberal judges, is true.
Other issues. The judges have tried to seize the executive branch's power, and they cannot do that. No longer. No longer. And on immigration, on a side note, today marks 2,711 arrests on these terrorists and these gangs. Total arrest today with HSI investigations. And thank you, Stephen Miller. Thank you to Homeland.
Hey, Kim, what was the percentage of the criminals that they arrested?
6%.
6%. 6%. Okay, it's very impressive.
And security. Thank you to everyone working hand in hand with the FBI on all of these transnational gangs. TDA has been a huge terror to our country, as well as MS-13, as well as Sinaloa cartels. No longer. No longer. These injunctions have allowed district court judges to be emperors. They vetoed all of President Trump's power, and they cannot do that. This has been a bipartisan problem that has lasted 5 presidential terms, 5 different presidents, and it has ended today. We will continue to fight for President Trump's policies. I want to thank the Office of White House Counsel, Dave Warrington. You and your staff have been incredible. Our Solicitor General's office, John Sauer, Sarah Harris, and Todd Blanche and Emil Bovey. Todd's going to say a few words.
All right, enough from her. That's it. The SCOTUS ruling to end all rulings. If a federal judge cannot rule on federal law except for an individual before him, that's the class action element, we no longer are governed by laws. Sotomayor puts it clearly, and here's a bit from her dissent. No right is safe in the new legal regime the court creates. Today, the threat is to birthright citizenship. Tomorrow, a different administration may try to seize firearms from law-abiding citizens. She knows how to get to them. Or prevent people of certain faiths from gathering to worship. The majority holds that absent cumbersome class action litigation, courts cannot completely enjoin even such plainly unlawful policies unless doing so is necessary to afford the formal parties complete relief. That holding renders constitutional guarantees meaningful in name only for any individuals who are not parties to a lawsuit. Because I will not be complicit in so grave an attack on our system of law, I dissent. Absolutely right. I don't think you can overstate how dangerous this ruling is, especially when you combine it with previous precedents that the president is not really accountable to the law. That if the president is acting within the president's powers, the president cannot be held accountable in any way by the judicial system. So you've got an unaccountable executive who can now issue really any executive order he wants, and the federal courts have no power to stop the executive order from taking effect before it damages people's lives unless there is a lawsuit, a class action lawsuit specifically. With this crew, you already heard him running down the laundry list of things that they want to do. That is frightening. And you want to talk about a very clear step on the road to tyranny. Look, we don't have a democracy. We haven't had a democracy in a very long time. And any framing of we have to do this to save democracy should be dismissed out of hand. We don't have a democracy. If there's any conversation to be had, it's how do you get one? We don't have one. This is taking it another step where, yeah, a lot of our constitutional protections have been eroded, particularly since 9/11. This essentially just eliminates your protections under the Constitution. Now you're more or less living under a king.
Yeah, it's a pretty terrible ruling, obviously. And, you know, the birthright citizenship was the sort of banner, I would say, argument behind the case. Now, they're saying, of course, they still have to adjudicate that. But the point is, this all takes time. It takes a tremendous amount of time. It allows them to get way out in front of the process. And, you know, the courts are the main mechanism of restraint to stop something like that from happening. And it had been working pretty well up until now. So now we have to see what the next move is, what the result of this is, how quickly and in what areas do they start taking advantage of this major gift that they've been handed.
It's very dangerous. It is extremely dangerous to civil liberties. What happens if tomorrow they decide they're going to adopt the International Holocaust Remembrance Association definition of anti-Semitism and prosecute on that basis.
Right.
You got to wait until they lock up a few thousand people on those grounds, and you got to wait for it to get to the Supreme Court. How long are people going to be locked up? Years?
Right. Exactly. It's insane.
You got to send them to CCOT?
Right.
Oops.
Yeah. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. All right. Here we go. Paul Chu says, you fine gentlemen should cover Antoinette Latouf's court success in Oz against ABC's illegal dismissal of her for being pro-Palestine. Thank you for that, Paul. The yuppies from that video, the Pride Parade, it doesn't seem like Zohran's going to usher in Sharia law. Worried about ushering in Shania Twain. Good one. Kuznetsky was saying, thanks to the 199, Thiel equals Jesus Pablum Meshuggah. Thank you. Baby Ethernet says he gives zero insight over future technologies. Kuznetsky Bassane says, what about all the children born of immigrant parents post-Civil War? Of course. Brad Gilbert, Pam Bondi left out, zero Epstein client arrests. Yes, thank you for that. Appreciate that. Snoop Sean, one question about MAGA going gay for Trump. Are they looking for romance, or is it physical attraction, or is it purely psychosexual? Thank you for that. Appreciate that. AI is overrated, says Otacon. They're trying to push us on it at work, and half the time it takes longer than that doing it manually because all the bullshit. At least Microsoft Excel never rickrolled me before. Thank you, Otacon. Jake,
so, I'm gonna go to the guy who there's a guy who dresses up as Trump and walks around outside Trump Tower. I'm going to ask him if any of these MAGA guys hit on him.
Yeah, there you go. That'd be a good question. Yeah, exactly. Jake, can we hit the scroll, please? Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Round of applause for Jake and the booth. So, folks, if you like what we do here, you can help us do more of it by becoming a member. You can subscribe at dudissidents.com/Patreon, dudissidents.com/Substack, or dudissidents.com/locals. All of those take you to our member platforms, or for just $5 a month, you can support the show. Perks of membership include your name up in lights here on the patron scroll. You also get bonus live streams, film club live streams once a month. A Boy and His Dog will be our presentation tomorrow. That'll be at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. So film club is tomorrow night at 7:30. Sign up and you'll get an email tomorrow by the early afternoon with instructions on how to join that. You also get post-game access once a month. We do a special post-game bonus segments plus call-in content once a month after the main show. And you also get call-in access to our post-show Q&As on Rumble once a week every Sunday evening. Tonight is Sunday. We will be switching over to Rumble for that shortly, but thank you all very much for your support. It really helps keep the show going, so we could not do this without our members. You guys are the backbone of the operation. That's dudissidents.com/Patreon, Substack, or Locals. Links are all up on the screen. Progressive Lefty says PT is straight up evil. Thank you, Progressive Lefty. Get Up King. Have you guys, yep, I got it. Have you guys pondered Thiel's investment in Rumble? It's just being used to gather data on the most dissident people. There seems to be unusually low resistance to it. He has investments in a lot. And so far, we have so far so good here.
Yeah, I mean, we're controlled opposition, so it doesn't bother us.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter. One other thing I want to plug here is the Misty Winston Show. That is our weekly show over on Rumble. Speaking of Rumble, Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Had a great show this last week. Dave DeCamp joined. That was amazing. We post clips to YouTube, but you got to follow us over on Rumble in order to get that show. So that's the Misty Winston Show, which airs every Wednesday at 8 p.m. We'll have more details on what's coming up this week on Tuesday, and we will let you know that. But please make sure you tune in Wednesday nights, 8 p.m. live, and look out for the clips on YouTube. All right. We got one more.
Where are we at on likes?
We are at 1,185 likes. All right. We got one more to do over here on the YouTube side. All right, folks, this is a terrible story, but it's one that really made the rounds for good reason. It's a killing field. IDF soldiers ordered to shoot deliberately at unarmed Gazans waiting for humanitarian aid. So this was a big expose published in Haaretz, which is, of course, the Israeli paper of record. Israeli soldiers in Gaza told Haaretz that the army has deliberately fired at Palestinians near aid distribution sites over the past month. Conversations with officers and soldiers reveal that commanders ordered troops to shoot at crowds to drive them away or disperse them, even though it was clear they posed no threat. In a statement released following publication of this expose, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz rejected the claims, which they called blood libels. Of
course they did, yes.
The GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, operates 4 food distribution sites, 3 in southern Gaza and 1 in the center, known in the IDF as rapid distribution centers. They are staffed by American and Palestinian workers and secured by the IDF from a distance of several hundred meters. Thousands and at times tens of thousands of Gazans arrive daily to collect food from these sites. It's a killing field, one soldier said. Where I was stationed, between 1 and 5 people were killed every day. They're treated like a hostile force. No crowd control measures, no tear gas, just live fire with everything imaginable. Heavy machine guns, grenade launchers, mortars. Then once the center opens, the shooting stops, and they know they can approach. Our form of communication is gunfire. The soldier added, we open fire early in the morning if someone tries to get in line from a few hundred meters away, and sometimes we just charge at them from close range. But there's no danger to the forces. According to him, I'm not aware of a single instance of return fire. There's no enemy, no weapons. He also said the activity in his area of service is referred to as Operation Salted Fish, the name of the Israeli version of the children's game, Red Light, Green Light. So red light, green light is where you say red light and they stop, and then green light they go until you say red light
Everyone's seen Squid Game.
Yeah. IDF officers told Haaretz that the army does not allow the public in Israel or abroad to see footage of what takes place around the food distribution sites. According to them, the army is satisfied that the GHF's operations have prevented a total collapse of international legitimacy for continuing the war. They believe the IDF has managed to turn Gaza into a backyard, especially since the war with Iran began. Well, that's what a lot of us were saying was part of the goal. And Netanyahu said when they devised the plan to let aid in after 11 months of a complete blockade, he said this is being done to give us legitimacy, quote unquote, on the world stage so that we'll keep getting weapons. Gaza doesn't interest anyone anymore, said a reservist who completed another round of duty in the northern strip this week. It's become a place with its own set of rules. The loss of human life means nothing. It's not even an unfortunate incident like they used to say. So here is some video from a Palestinian civilian looking on at these aid lines.
So what we are seeing in the horizon is Israel, and here we are seeing crowds of people waiting for the aid trucks to enter. And who knows if gonna enter or not. Like, people are waiting here for hours, not like expecting the aid to enter at any moment, but no guarantees. Okay, I'm getting closer and I can hear the gunshots very clearly.
You just heard a few off in the distance. Mm-hmm. And you can hear some at the end of this video. So this is from Richard Kemp. I visited another GHF update food delivery site today. Thousands of Gazans collecting the free aid they need. Almost 50 million meals delivered in the last month, and now around 2 million a day. Don't believe the lies. So this is a propagandist who is telling you how great things are going. And if you listen at the end, this would be comical if it weren't so tragic. You actually hear gunshots at the end of this very video.
Richard Kemp here at one of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation's distribution centres inside Gaza. You will have heard a lot of propaganda about violent attacks in and around the GHF sites here. It's all lies generated by Hamas in order to discredit the GHF. The Hamas hate the GHF because the GHF delivers aid directly into the hands of the Gazan people without being seized by Hamas and sold at a profit. Very many of the people behind me here have told me it's the first time they've ever received free aid. So don't believe the propaganda that's been churned out by Hamas and amplified by too much of the international and national media.
You hear that? So you hear literally a gunshot go off right after he says that.
Incredible. Who is this guy? Who is he?
Well, Max Blumenthal has an answer to that question here. One of the Israel lobby's most reliable propaganda assets, Richard Kemp, is sent to whitewash one of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation concentration camps, just as he's done praising the dystopian program at the 45-second mark. Soldiers can be heard firing at starving civilians lured there. So yeah, I mean that is just unbelievable. It's unbelievable that they couldn't get a take in without that happening. So he is apparently a British Army officer. I guess he's retired now, but I guess they sent him in there to tell everybody, look how well everything is going. Now, you want to hear what some of the Hasbara is in response to this. This is pretty wild. If that wasn't bad enough, Eitan Fishberger says, more lies from Haaretz. Yair Eisner caught. So apparently there was, there's the Hebrew writing and then there's the English translation of their publication. Caught that the English version claims IDF soldiers were told to fire at Palestinians at Gaza aid sites. Conversely, the original Hebrew version says that they were told to fire toward masses congregating near the sites to keep them away. So in other words, he's nitpicking. No. In Hebrew, they didn't say fire at the people. They said fire toward them.
Oh, well, that's a completely different situation. Yeah. I guess that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's how cops are supposed to do it here.
Towards masses of civilians.
Yeah, no, that's how cops are doing it here. If you go to a concert, when the concert lets out and the cops are, ushering people, out of the venue, that's what they do. They shoot toward them.
So they shoot towards them.
Move. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We've got it all wrong.
Exactly. And so today, the editorial board at Haaretz concludes Israel turned Gaza's aid centers into death traps. The killing has to stop. This statement by the editorial board was meant as a direct follow-up. As you can see in the body of text there, the names that they refer to are the names on the initial report. So, this is the Israeli paper of record coming out with quite a bombshell sourced from the IDF itself, some members who have actually communicated to them that, yes, they are under orders to fire at or toward, as the Hasbara machine would say, civilians going to collect aid. Just, about as sadistic and evil a thing as you can imagine. And now you have the paper of record in Israel saying, with proof, fully documented, fully sourced accounts, that that's exactly what's happening. And so, when you talk about Israeli society collapsing, this is partly why. Because when you start having the paper of record here, we talked to George from Haifa. He called into the show last time on the post game. Anyone in Israel who is not this psychotic and who does not have what it's going to take to endure incurring the wrath of the world is just going to leave. They're just going to leave. Like, a lot of the people in Israel are people who moved there in the first place. So they're not people who are averse to packing up and leaving, right? And I think that's what's going to be the result of this, and I think that is going to hasten the collapse of Israeli society, is that so many people are just not going to find it worthwhile to live there for whatever reason. What you're
gonna have left are the fucking inbred Hills Have Eyes fucking settler.
Yeah, the Hebron
freaks.
Hills Have Eyes. Yeah,
the Hebron Hills Have Eyes freaks are gonna be left, and who's going to want to go to that country at that point? It's going to just be a fundamentalist ethno-state without even the pretense of liberalism. Who's going to want to go there? What tourists are going to go to Israel after this? And that's a big part of their economy. That's not a trivial thing. And as time goes on, you are going to see more and more countries refuse to do any kind of trade with Israel. This is why they're so desperate to insist that BDS is anti-Semitic, because they know that the more that spreads, the more impossible it's going to be to maintain this project as anything other than a third world hellhole.
Exactly. All right, folks, we're going to do a quick word from Rumble Premium before we switch over to Rumble. So you can find this stream at dudissidents.com/Rumble. And this sponsorship is directly from Rumble, and it's one that's incredibly important to the survival of the company. So when Rumble first started in 2013, they built the platform for the small creator. They didn't censor or have biases. They were fair and treated all creators equally. No one thought platforms would censor political conversation or censor opinions on COVID, but they did. Facebook admitted they fell to such pressure from the Biden and Harris administration. Rumble did not. They held the line. They're attacked daily for giving shows like us a voice to talk to audiences like you. They're attacked in corporate media. They're attacked by governments like France. They're attacked from brand advertisers who refuse to work with them. So while corporate America is fighting to remove speech, Rumble is fighting to keep it. But Rumble won't survive with brand advertisers alone because they don't get many of them. So watching our show on Rumble is the most they can ask from you. But if you really believe in this fight and you have the means, one way you can help Rumble survive is by joining Rumble Premium, which is the ad-free version of the Rumble platform. So join the community that believes in the First Amendment and believes in our human right to free speech. Rumble is offering $10 off with the promo code STUDIO when you purchase an annual subscription. So go to rumble.com/premium and use promo code STUDIO. Like I said, if you have the means and believe in the cause, now is the time to join Rumble Premium. If you don't have the means, we are, of course, just happy if you watch us on the platform. Okay. All right. Let's see, what do we got over here on YouTube? We have Eric Torres says, birthright citizenship is a major issue that unfortunately some of my Latinos did not take into consideration just because they are fair skin. Interesting. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate that very much. El Casador says, funny how we call these guys tech bros. Some here have no uni degrees in the tech field. They do seem to have plenty of history, psychology, etc. The tech is just the new tools like the printing press.
Carp's degree is in what, philosophy or some shit?
Yeah. Professor Brown note, due dissidents, you are like a stream of bat's piss. Your magistries shine out like a shaft of gold while all around is dark. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. All right. My real name says, I'm sure porn viewing youth know how to use a VPN. Good point. Keg Biscaro, I don't know what's on for movie night, but the BB Files is available to watch for free on Odyssey in case anyone is looking for it. Yeah, it's on X2. It's on X2. Yep. Yeah, we're going to do Boy and His Dog tomorrow. But thank you for that. Appreciate that. I do want to watch the BB Files 100%. Coming in late with this, but wasn't Thiel on Rogan accusing the CFPB of doing what he does with debanking and deplatforming? Yeah, he could be the AC. That was Andreessen.
That was Andreessen, yeah. We did a whole thing about that.
Answer
multiple times.
Thing about that.
It's probably why we can't show Joe Rogan clips anymore.
Exactly. All right, folks, so head on over to Rumble. We got one more segment over there before calls, right?
Yeah, we are going to be covering Glastonbury over there on Rumble.
Yep.
We can't cover it here for obvious reasons. And on the intermission, I've got some cuts from Glastonbury.
All right.
For you to enjoy.
DoDissidents.com/Rumble. Head over there right now for the final segment of the show, and then we will be taking calls afterwards. So please head on over there now and then join us back here at 2 p.m. Sunday afternoon. Thank you to everybody in the chat, the YouTubers. Thanks to the mods for keeping the peace in the chat over there. Thanks to Jake in the booth. Please do join us after a brief 5-minute intermission for the conclusion of the show and hang out for the Q&A. So don't leave us now. Stay up a little longer. Appreciate you all very much. If we don't see you till Tuesday, then we'll see you Tuesday. Otherwise, we'll see you in 5 minutes. Until whenever we see you again, thanks for tonight. Be safe and be well.
Courage!
Please clap.